Chapter 439. The fact that you could easily obtain even the entrance exam questions, not to mention other more confidential information. The words of the Five Elders Association's cultivator gradually became low and contemplative, clearly lost in thought and speculation. After a moment, he snapped back to reality and looked at Zhou Qingyang. Although there were some minor flaws, overall, being able to connect with the organization behind He Zhenghao is a great achievement on your part. He tossed over a storage ring. Inside, you'll find the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique you wanted, along with some enlightenment pills. In addition, there's also 50,000 contribution points worth of spirit stones as a reward for your achievement. Upon hearing this, Li Fan received the storage ring and checked its contents, his face showing delight. 50,000 contribution points. Why is the boss being so generous? The Five Elders Association cultivator snorted. Since there is merit, there will naturally be rewards. From now on, while you continue to stay undercover, make sure to maintain your relationship with He Zhenghao. If possible, try to extract some information from him about the mysterious organization behind him. Of course, if that's not possible, don't force it. Just being able to connect with them and exchange spirit stones for secrets is enough. Li Fan nodded repeatedly. Alright, you can go back now. You've been in contact a bit too frequently lately. For the time being, avoid meeting with the boss to prevent any slip-ups. If anything unusual happens, you'll be contacted again. After carefully instructing him, the other person left Yulin Island. Only then did Li Fan's clone leisurely make his way back. On Tian Island, Li Fan's main body had been waiting for a long time. 550,000 contribution points, 3 bottles of enlightenment pills, the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique. This harvest isn't bad at all. After tallying the items from both the main body and the clone's storage rings, Li Fan nodded slightly. With such a large amount of contribution points, whatever I plan next will be much easier. After just a glance, Li Fan no longer paid attention to the pile of spirit stones. Once it reaches a certain level, even more just becomes a string of numbers. Moreover, for someone like Li Fan, who can continuously reincarnate and start over, the more cycles he goes through and the more information he gathers, the easier it becomes to acquire contribution points. Li Fan first began reading the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique asterisk. To be safe, his clone Zhou Qingyang inspected the jade slip. The language style was vastly different from the techniques that could be exchanged in the Tianquan mirror of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. It wasn't so straightforward and to the point, focusing directly on key cultivation aspects. Instead, it was filled with many mysterious and obscure phrases, making it somewhat difficult to understand. A distinct ancient style. Fortunately, Li Fan had already practiced several techniques passed down from ancient times, so he spent half a day thoroughly understanding it. The heaven-devouring earth-eating technique is not a primary cultivation technique to enhance one's realm. Nor is it merely a secret method to alter the way a cultivator absorbs spiritual energy. Rather, it functions more like a divine ability. It allows the cultivator to aggressively absorb the earth's veins and spiritual veins, converting them into their own spiritual energy for cultivation. At the same time, it accelerates and enhances the cultivation of their primary technique. Generally speaking, the amount of spiritual energy a cultivator can absorb has a certain limit. Once they reach their capacity, forcibly absorbing more could result in their body exploding. However, after practicing the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, this concern no longer exists. The excess energy absorbed transforms into an accelerator that propels the cultivation technique. The more you absorb, the faster the technique operates on its own. This continues until you break through your realm, allowing you to devour even more. This cycle repeats endlessly until you have devoured heaven and earth. Of course, the prerequisite is that you don't get discovered and then beaten to death. Undoubtedly, this parasitic cultivation method is even more malignant than the immortal ancestors' new method. It would cause almost irreversible damage to the world in a short period, making it the enemy of all other cultivators. But as long as it improves his cultivation, Li Fan doesn't care about being the enemy of the world. After carefully understanding it, Zhou Qingyang's clone attempted to operate the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique asterisk. In an instant, his eyes turned blood red. The entire world in his field of vision changed. There were no longer distinctions between people, landscapes, and objects. Only the difference between what was delicious and what was not. The clone stared at the main body for a while before turning his gaze toward the ground beneath Tian Island. A yellowish earth vein extended from beneath the island, reaching all the way to the seabed. It was connected to the earth in all directions. It looked exceedingly appetizing. The clone placed his hands gently on the ground, and a suction force erupted from his palms. To Li Fan's surprise, according to the technique's description, the earth vein's energy should be absorbed into the body without resistance. But it remained unmoved. What's going on? Li Fan carefully checked again and confirmed that he had not made any mistakes in his cultivation. He then attempted it once more. This time, he unleashed more power, increasing the suction force. The earth vein's energy trembled slightly but seemed to be an interconnected whole, unmovable. The delicacy was right in front of him, but he couldn't enjoy it. The clone's eyes grew even redder. He became anxious and relentlessly intensified the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique's suction. The earth vein continued to resist. As the two forces clashed, the entire Tian island began to tremble slightly. If this continued, the disturbance would undoubtedly arouse suspicion from others. But the clone didn't care at all and showed no signs of stopping. It wasn't until the main body, who had been observing, intervened and slapped Zhou Qingang, unconscious, that the shaking on Tian Island ceased. This heaven-devouring earth-eating technique is a bit sinister. Li Fan frowned slightly. The main body and the clone share the same consciousness, so theoretically, there shouldn't be a situation where the clone loses control. But just now, under the influence of the eating desire, Li Fan's consciousness felt as if it had split in two. When the clone looked at the main body, there was even a fleeting thought of devouring it. But at that time, it was still controllable. When the eating was obstructed, and the desire was not satisfied, the clone became completely bewitched. Even though he knew the consequences of forcibly absorbing Tian Island's earth vein, he just couldn't stop himself. No wonder the creator of this technique couldn't restrain himself. It's not that he didn't want to, but that he simply couldn't. Li Fan couldn't help but feel a bit regretful. Not for the creator's fate, but for the fact that this secret technique couldn't be fully utilized by him. But there's no need to be overly concerned. I have the mountain-sitting technique *, and heaven-devouring earth-eating technique would only be an added bonus. Besides, I could still let others practice this technique and then reap the benefits. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan set the matter aside. His gaze penetrated through layers of obstacles and looked at the earth veins beneath Tian Island. The original mountain and river formation had already interconnected the earth veins of the world. Although the formation has now been replaced by the heavenly origin vitality formation, the effect remains. Even if I wanted to devour heaven and eat earth, it wouldn't be as easy as it was in ancient times. The once terrifying forbidden technique from thousands of years ago, after the passage of time, now seems so weak. No wonder the Five Elders Association handed it over so easily to a Foundation establishment spy. Li Fan shook his head and sighed. Chapter 440. Come to think of it, this heaven-devouring earth-eating technique is quite similar to the returning origin shell. Both can consume the earth's veins and have no sense of restraint. It seems that many techniques from ancient times were created by mimicking mythical beasts. Li Fan recalled the sights he witnessed in the Clash of 10,000 Laws section of the Divine Treasures Museum, lost in thought. Unfortunately, while deriving techniques from the traits of mythical beasts, their flaws were also inherited. However, if the flaw of losing one's mind could be eliminated through improvements using the Tao Derivation Stone, it could still be considered a powerful divine ability. Thinking of this, Li Fan shook his head. I fear there is no chance in this world. I am about to break through to the nascent soul stage, and the sitting mountain art has reached its limit. Pushing it to a higher level is the most urgent task. The image of a young cultivator's carefree face suddenly surfaced in Li Fan's mind. It was Han Yi from his previous life, who, with the help of the heavenly feather pill that extended life by 800 years, successfully earned the qualification to derive the derivation law beads into the Tao integration stage technique. If I want to elevate the sitting mountain art to the Tao integration stage in one go, I need to steal this person's fortune. However, something seems off about this person. No matter how I look at him, he doesn't seem like someone blessed with great fortune. In my previous life, my clone explored the heavenly capital ruins with him, and not only did we find nothing, but we also encountered constant danger, almost losing our lives. I could say that even my clone, which had almost no fortune, was far superior to him. But it is true that he obtained the heavenly feather pill and treasures like the fixed fish head lottery. Li Fan frowned slightly. I remember that before his sudden wealth, he was once deceived by a Foundation establishment master. When the time comes, I should pay extra attention to him. Let us see how he turned his life around from being penniless to prosperous. After contemplating for a long time, his clone finally awakened. Li Fan put away all the spirit stones and enlightenment pills, leaving the clone to continue guarding Tian Island. He then changed his appearance again and headed to the northeasternmost corner of the Kangyun Sea through the teleportation array. His destination was naturally Yin Yin Island, where the Master Yin resided. In the entire Kangyun Sea, there weren't many people Li Fan cared about. Master Yin was definitely one of them. It wasn't just because of the Foundation establishment of self technique he comprehended, which was verified by Su Changyu in his previous life and was indeed feasible. It was still slightly flawed and needed to be perfected. What intrigued Li Fan the most was that after more than a decade of researching the immortal mortal miasma, Master Yin eventually chose to end his own life. Even ants cling to life. Theoretically, someone as obsessed as Master Yin would be even less likely to give up their life easily. But he did, which could only mean one thing. He finally discovered the secret of the immortal mortal miasma, and the result was so unbearable that it drove him to despair. In his utter desolation, he lost the will to continue living. Only then did he choose to self-immolate. Li Fan was also very interested in this secret. After 3 days, Li Fan quietly arrived outside Yin Yin Island. From a distance, the cries of mortals rose and fell continuously. Li Fan didn't intend to alert Master Yin, he only planned to release the formless killing intent to monitor him. But the result shocked him. The moment the formless killing intent locked onto Master Yin, the perspective suddenly split into hundreds of fragments. Besides the one on the ground who was concentrating on conducting an experiment, all the others were broken and mutilated corpses in the basement, all looking exactly like Master Yin. From the heavenly perspective, Li Fan discovered that these dismembered and seemingly dead corpses were actually still alive. As they quietly lay in the basement, they would occasionally make barely noticeable movements, like turning their bodies or rolling their eyes. Looking into their eyes, Li Fan even had the thought that these corpses seemed to be thinking. This eerie scene sent a chill down Li Fan's spine. The splitting of the formless killing intent's perspective means that, in the eyes of heaven and earth, these living corpses are actually the same person as Master Yin. Li Fan thought this, becoming even more solemn. He remembered that Master Yin had mentioned he dissected hundreds of corpses in this basement to finally comprehend the Foundation establishment of self. Given the current situation, it's highly likely that he dissected, himself, one body at a time while still retaining consciousness. A true madman. No wonder he was able to comprehend a technique as heaven-defying as Foundation establishment of self. If he were focused on cultivation, he could have easily reached the Tao integration stage. Unfortunately, he was obsessed with studying the immortal mortal miasma. Li Fan couldn't help but sigh in admiration as he stared at the only Master Yin who could still move normally. Throughout his reincarnations, Li Fan had encountered countless so-called geniuses. Even Brother Zhang's wish to suppress the ancient times with his Dharma body and Mr. Bai, who ascended to godhood as immortal in an instant. These were all figures capable of being remembered for 100 lifetimes. But none of them gave Li Fan the same eerie feeling as this Foundation establishment Master Yin. Li Fan spied on Yin Yin Island for several days. Master Yin was like an unrelenting machine, experimenting, recording, thinking. Then repeating the experiments. There was no sign of fatigue on his face, only deep immersion. Li Fan also noticed that whenever Master Yin was deep in thought, the expressions of contemplation on the faces of the hundreds of corpses in the basement became more pronounced. It's like having hundreds of versions of himself pondering the same problem simultaneously. Li Fan realized, perhaps that's why he was able to unravel the mystery of the immortal mortal miasma. Li Fan then recalled the words of Master Yin to Su Changyu in his previous life when he was possessed. Yes, where did these corpses come from? Ah, I remember now. It was a huge rainstorm. Countless corpses fell from the sky like raindrops, and I took the opportunity to collect a few. Li Fan squinted slightly. So, these hundreds of corpses picked up from the rain were all versions of himself. Truly a bizarre matter. After pondering for a long time, he couldn't find any related examples from the secret records of the Xuanwang realm he had read. Li Fan had no choice but to put the matter aside for now. He continued to observe from the outside for a few more days until Yin Yin Island ran out of mortal materials. Master Yin needed to go out to find more mortals as test subjects. Only then did Li Fan quietly leave. I'll keep monitoring him for now. With the transformation of unified divine Tao secret technique, it won't affect my regular cultivation. Li Fan took one last deep look at Master Yin hurriedly departing figure, returned to his heavenly mechanism sect cultivator appearance, and made his way back to 10,000 Immortal Island. He consumed an enlightenment pill and entered the spiritual enlightened state. Li Fan temporarily secluded himself to focus on cultivation. With the dual boosts, even though Li Fan was practicing the extremely difficult mountain sitting art, his progress was swift. More than 2 months later, with a surge of pure cultivation feedback suddenly appearing in his dantian, Li Fan finally awoke from his seclusion. Chapter 441. This is, has He Zhenghao broken through to the late foundation establishment stage? Li Fan was somewhat surprised after sensing this. In just over 2 months, this speed is even faster than in his previous life. What happened? After reviewing the surveillance images of He Zhenghao stored in the transformation Tao stone, Li Fan couldn't help but smile. Recently, He Zhenghao has indeed been riding high. The news that he had changed his fate through the guidance of a senior from the Heavenly Mechanism sect had spread like wildfire throughout the Kongyan Sea. Previously, due to practicing the mountain sitting art, He Zhenghao had begun establishing connections and developing his network early on. And because of his natural talent in formations, he maintained decent relationships with the formation masters in the formation strategy hall. So even though He Zhenghao was just a foundation establishment cultivator, his network of connections was not to be underestimated. In his previous life, it was He Zhenghao who helped Li Fan secure a position in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. This time, through a stroke of luck, He Zhenghao switched to a nascent soul technique that was extremely compatible with him. It was clear to anyone with eyes that, barring any major mishaps, He Zhenghao's achievement of the nascent soul stage was practically a certainty. A formation master at the nascent soul level, and one skilled in social interactions. With this, He Zhenghao's status in the eyes of others changed dramatically. People came to visit him constantly, and He Zhenghao welcomed them all with a warm smile. He received so many gifts that his hands grew tired, and he felt incredibly happy. His cultivation advanced rapidly, and he soon broke through to the late foundation establishment stage. During this process, the visiting cultivators inevitably began to inquire about the so-called ancient heavenly mechanisms sect cultivator. After all, who wouldn't be envious of such an opportunity to double one's fortune overnight? If they could also latch onto this person. At first, He Zhenghao managed to brush them off with excuses like, I haven't been in contact for a while, or, I haven't seen this senior again. But as more and more cultivators of increasingly higher status asked, He Zhenghao began to feel the pressure. Because he refused to reveal any information about the heavenly mechanisms sect cultivator, some cultivators began to express dissatisfaction. Accusations that He Zhenghao was hogging the benefits began to spread. Even Chu Ming, the nascent soul cultivator from the administration hall who had helped Li Fan join the 10,000 Immortals Alliance at He Zhenghao's request, began to question He Zhenghao after being unable to reach Li Fan. Heaven knows, He Zhenghao truly didn't know where Li Fan had gone. He couldn't contact him through the Tianshuan mirror. Li Fan hadn't even left him a single communication talisman. Faced with increasing pressure from these cultivators, He Zhenghao was on the verge of tears. He wished he could slap his 2-month-ago self. Why did you have to go around bragging for no reason? Watching the repeated messages from He Zhenghao on the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan's lips curved slightly. Let it simmer a little longer, the atmosphere is almost ready. 5 million contribution points are enough to support the first phase of the plan. But for now, let fellow Taoist he bear the brunt a bit longer. Li Fan then sensed the situation on the side of the Foundation establishment master. Li Chenfeng had already returned. With him was a veiled woman in a blue dress. Li Chenfeng and the other two showed great respect towards this woman, addressing her as the Saint Master. Since arriving in the Xuanwang realm, this Saint Master hadn't left the chamber on the island. When Li Chenfeng exited the chamber, Li Fan managed to see that she was fiddling with a machine resembling an armillary sphere. Saint Master, interesting. The agreed 3-month period has passed, so let me, as the envoy of the messenger of the Federation of All Worlds, go meet her. Li Fan didn't sense any danger from this woman in blue. Instead, he faintly felt a sense of familiarity. This familiarity was so faint that even after searching the memories stored in the transformation Tao stone, he couldn't identify its source. This only made Li Fan more intrigued. He resumed his previous appearance and swiftly flew towards the target location. Before long, he arrived in the sky above the island. Looking closely, he saw that Li Chunfeng and the other two were already waiting at the door. "Senior, please follow us," Li Chunfeng said softly, leading Li Fan into the chamber. Li Fan's expression remained calm, but he was somewhat cautious inside. He stared at the veiled woman sitting not far away and asked, "Who is this?" "I am here at the request of the Imperial Princess to see if this so-called immortal ruins are real." The woman in blue referred to herself as old, but her voice was clear and youthful, like that of a teenage girl. "Oh, in that case, what have you found?" Li Fan asked with interest, eyeing the device in front of her. In the center, a golden sphere remained still, while many differently colored spheres moved in irregular orbits around it. The woman in blue sighed and shook her head. "Something seems to be concealing the existence of the immortal ruins, making it impossible to detect. However, it's true that this place has become even more unusual." Li Fan narrowed his eyes slightly. "More unusual?" The woman in blue waved her hand, putting away the device. "This is the Void Coordinator Locator, a device the Empire spent thousands of years crafting. It can mark and lock the position of one's location within the endless void and map the surrounding environment. It was originally intended for navigation through the void after leaving the Xuanwang realm. Now, using it to detect the immortal ruins can be considered putting it to good use." Li Fan listened quietly as the woman in blue explained. "In this place, the Xuanwang realm's main world." A hint of nostalgia flashed in the woman's eyes. "The locator's data is all scrambled. It's as if there's a massive distortion field nearby, affecting space-time and interfering with the mapping results. From a theoretical standpoint, the observation results align with what you've said about the existence of a devouring immortal ruins." Li Fan coldly replied, "I have no reason to deceive you in this matter." The woman in blue smiled gently. "No, you did deceive us." Li Fan's eyes narrowed as his heart tightened. "What do you mean?" The woman in blue gazed at the Xuanwang realm's sky and slowly said, "Because even if the immortal ruins do exist, our empire will not be swallowed by it after leaving the Xuanwang realm. Not just us, all the small worlds captured by the 10 great immortal sects back then won't suffer that fate either." Li Fan remained silent. The woman in blue continued, "Because we aren't in the same space-time as the Xuanwang realm at all. We're only connected by the immortal severing passage. If we sever the connection with the Xuanwang realm, we will gain complete freedom. And the Xuanwang realm will eventually meet its end." Chapter 442. Is the small world not located in the same space-time as the Xuanwang realm? As the woman in the green dress looked at Li Fan with a half-smile, his thoughts were racing. Is it true, or false? Is this a test, or a fabricated lie used as a bargaining chip? In a flash, Li Fan quickly analyzed the situation. If the other party had already figured out that he was a complete fraud, they wouldn't waste time explaining anything. Instead, the logical choice would be to either run away or set a trap to capture him and force a confession. This meant that, to a large extent, the woman in green was still unsure of his identity. After all, in the history of the Xuanwang realm, there really had been instances where the small worlds united to launch a counterattack against the cultivation realm. If the small world and the Xuanwang realm were not in the same space-time, and if he were truly an emissary of the messenger of the Federation of all worlds, he would definitely be aware of this. Given that the future of the Empire was at stake, the Saint Master would not fabricate a lie that could be easily exposed. Therefore, what she said might very well be the truth. At the very least, it was true in the eyes of the woman in green. A question naturally arose. Since the small world and the Xuanwang realm are not in the same space-time, then why, when faced with the threat of the immortal ruins, did the cultivators of the Xuanwang realm choose to escape to the small world through the path of immortal severance and sever all ties with the Xuanwang realm? If nascent soul transformation, and Dao integration stage cultivators might struggle due to the lack of spiritual energy in the small world and inability to cut off the passage, then for longevity immortal, these limitations should be negligible. So why did the longevity immortal escape? The answer to this question could only be one of three possibilities. They were unafraid, unwilling, or unable. Unafraid. In his past life, the one unified heart heavenly sovereign retreated in the face of the spirit-locking formation as threat of mutual destruction. This indicates that even longevity immortal cold survived the immortal ruins. Thus, this possibility could be ruled out. Unwilling, righteous and resolute, they would rather die than leave, following the Xuanwang realm to fall into the immortal ruins. Judging from the current cultivation paths of the cultivators in this realm, this would not be the choice of the present longevity immortal. This leaves only one answer. The longevity immortal are unable to leave the Xuanwang realm. As this thought crossed his mind, Li Fan found it absurd and laughable. The strength of longevity immortal stage cultivators was terrifying. How could it be possible? But Li Fan suddenly froze. What if it were true? For a long time, Li Fan had a question. Why does going against the principles of heaven and earth lead to achieving longevity? All living beings have a finite lifespan. Even the so-called longevity species in legends only live a bit longer than ordinary creatures. If there is anything in the Xuanwang realm that truly deserves the term longevity, it would likely be the world itself. Why does defying the principles of heaven and earth lead to a complete transformation? Allowing cultivators to live as long as the heavens and earth. Principles of heaven and earth, going against the principles of heaven and earth. Suddenly, an image flashed through Li Fan's mind. In his past life, when Ji Hongdao faced senior sister Zhao's aggressive questioning, he once said, after a heavenly sovereign establishes a Dao law, they should no longer engage in mundane disputes. Dao law. These two words were like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the fog. They made Li Fan notice something he had overlooked for a long time. All beings live without worry and enjoy life. All beings must respect and follow the cultivation methods of the heavenly sovereign who transmits the Dao law. These rules, which defy common sense, now truly exist between heaven and earth. In other words, after reversing the original principles of heaven and earth, the Dao law established by heavenly sovereign replaced them, becoming new principles of heaven and earth and thus becoming part of the world. It was for this reason that the heavenly sovereign have gained a lifespan as long as that of the heavens and earth. Likewise, it was for this reason that the longevity immortal could not leave the Xuanwang realm. Before reaching the longevity immortal stage, cultivators were like bandits who entered a house and plundered its furniture and treasures, stuffing them into their pockets. But some greedy individuals set their sights on the house itself. They wanted to take over the house and claim it as their own. They succeeded, but in doing so, they triggered the house's ultimate countermeasure. The door slammed shut, and while they became the owners of the house, they were also forever trapped inside. Is this the world's retaliation? Li Fan suddenly had an epiphany. He had understood one principle earlier. When faced with cultivators who sought to plunder the heavens and the earth, the world itself was not entirely powerless to resist. Apart from the suddenly established law that immortal techniques cannot be cultivated simultaneously, and the descent of the spirit of heaven and earth to perform its duties, which are measures targeting ordinary cultivators. The world also took extreme measures against those powerful enough to threaten it. That measure was, if you cannot beat them, recruit them. This tactic was indeed effective. Because after achieving the longevity immortal, the sovereign's allegiance shifted from that of cultivators to that of the world itself. If cultivators recklessly plunder the heavens and earth without restraint, it could eventually lead to the world's exhaustion and decline. And the longevity immortals, who had become one with the world, had to intervene to prevent such a catastrophe. Therefore, the number of cultivators had to be controlled. This was one of the reasons why the number of cultivators could not be too large. Li Fan thought back to when the 10 immortal sects offered a reward for the Xuantian treasure mirror. They claimed that anyone who possessed this mirror could exchange it for a seat as a longevity immortal. It seems that in ancient times, the longevity immortal stage might also have been achieved by some means of stealing the original principle of longevity from the world. Li Fan mused. After this line of reasoning, Li Fan felt a slight sense of disappointment. The longevity immortals of the Xuanwang realm seemed to fall short of his ideal of longevity. They merely borrowed the power of the world to gain a lifespan that was not truly their own. Fake longevity, but strictly speaking, is not something particularly unacceptable. After all, the longevity immortal stage in this realm was merely an attempt by cultivators to extend their lives after the immortal path was severed in the Xuanwang realm. And it might not be impossible to go further. Li Fan thought of the Dao transmission heavenly sovereign who disappeared in his past life. This pioneer of new methods might have already broken free from the world's constraints. No wonder in the last life, the heavenly sovereign of Dao transmission did not appear for thousands of years. And even when wars broke out from time to time, the sovereigns of the Five Elders Association never intervened. Because in the eyes of the Five Elders Association as sovereigns, if the longevity immortal stage cannot leave the Xuanwang realm, then the Dao transmission sovereign must still be somewhere. They were held back merely by an agreement on a piece of paper. Until later, when they realized something was wrong, they became desperate to act personally. The effects of the Enlightenment pill had not completely faded. In a sudden flash of insight, through a fact inadvertently revealed by the woman in green, Li Fan deduced a possible and logically consistent truth about the Xuanwang realm. New TL notes. I'm disappointed to see that my longevity simulation has been dropped again, this time by another translator. As one of my favorite ongoing Shenxia novels, it's disheartening to see it without a reliable English translation. Many of you have been eager to read this story in well-translated English but were forced to rely on MTL or raw chapters. I believe this story and our community deserve better. I'm taking on the challenge. I'm thrilled to announce that I'll be translating my longevity simulation. But please note that I'm already working on another novel. The Path of Immortality starts with creating Water Bear GU. I hadn't planned on adding another project until I caught up with the raw chapters, but my love for my longevity simulation won me over, and I also think of this as opportunity to reread and refresh my memory as I read it many months ago. Some important details to note. As the third translator of this novel, I would like to bring to your attention that there may be slight variations in wording, terminology, techniques, and naming conventions compared to previous translations. This is a natural consequence of the translators changing midway, where different interpreters may choose to express using different terms and styles. In the event that you notice any discrepancies or have differing opinions on specific translated words or phrases, please do not hesitate to share your feedback in the comments section below. Your input is invaluable in helping me refine the translation and ensure its accuracy. Just a heads up, you might notice some weirdness with names and stuff at first, but don't worry, it gets easier as you keep reading. The more you dive in, the more familiar everything will feel. Since many chapters have already been translated by previous translators, I'll start translating from chapter 439, right after the previous translation ended. Your support means everything. To keep myself motivated and post daily chapters, I need your support. You can help me by visiting my Patreon page. Spirit Stone Translation, and of course, Patreon supporters will receive an extra chapter. Thank you for your support, and I look forward to sharing this amazing story with you. Chapter 443. Back in the fallen immortal realm, the wise beast Emperor Sanmo once told Lu Ya, even when you see something with your own eyes, it may not always be the truth. Similarly, the conclusions Li Fan has deduced now may not be absolutely correct. It's like the story of the blind men feeling an elephanta what they perceive might not be the whole picture. But it's still part of the truth. In his mind, the crystal of the Tao derivation stone emitted a bright blue light, instantly recording all the countless thoughts that crossed his mind. Next, Li Fan needed to consider how to deal with the woman in green. Shortly after she finished speaking, Li Fan shook his head and replied, "The power of the immortal ruins is beyond what ordinary people can imagine. A force that can even distort space-time brings consequences that are hard to predict. You say that once the immortal realm passage is severed, you will be free from all restraints and completely liberated. But that's only in theory. Who can guarantee what will actually happen?" As Li Fan spoke slowly, he subtly observed the woman in green's expression. After all, those places that left the Xuanwang realm before have all gone silent, and there's no way to contact them anymore. Are they truly free, or have they already been destroyed in the immortal ruins? Who knows? Otherwise, why would our Federation of All Worlds be able to recruit so many members? Even if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance of failure, it's still too risky for an entire civilization. Li Fan spoke with a slight tone of sarcasm. The woman's smile gradually faded as she stared at Li Fan, seemingly trying to discern something from his face. But Li Fan remained composed, showing no signs of weakness. The woman in green finally said, "You're right. That's also why I've returned to the Xuanwang realm this time. Currently, very few people within the Empire know about the existence of the immortal ruins. But there's no such thing as a secret that can't be discovered. Once the conservatives learn of this, the resistance to the plan to leave the Xuanwang realm will only increase. At that time, even the 1,000 years of prestige accumulated by the imperial family may not be enough to peacefully implement this plan. Li Fan asked, "So, are you here to seek help?" The woman in green nodded. The imperial princess's determination to carry out the plan to leave the Xuanwang realm hasn't changed. Even though there are risks, we believe it's worth it. However, the despicable nobles within the empire may not share this view. To avoid internal conflict, the empire must accelerate the pace of the plan. She paused for a moment before continuing, "While we speed up the acquisition of the path-fusing techniques, we also need to expedite the resources for nurturing the rift whale." As she spoke, she handed over a jade slip. A quick scan with his spiritual sense revealed a long list of resources. Searching his memory, Li Fan found that while most of these resources weren't individually expensive, the sheer quantity required was staggering. The total cost was likely beyond the 5 million contribution points he currently had. His eyebrows slightly raised as he said, "If you join the Federation of All Worlds, the organization might consider assisting with what you need. But since you've already decided to leave, our organization isn't a charity." The woman in green replied, "As you said, there's a chance that leaving the Xuanwang realm might lead to destruction. Although the Empire's resolve remains unchanged, it doesn't hurt to hedge our bets." Li Fan's eyes flickered. "You mean?" "That's right. The Empire will allocate a portion of its forces to join the Federation of All Worlds. As an alternate seat of civilization, they will remain in the Xuanwang realm. If the Empire does encounter catastrophe in the future, they can continue the imperial legacy as a separate branch." The woman in green spoke with burning eyes, revealing her true intentions. Hearing this, Li Fan couldn't help but sneer, "Aren't you overestimating yourselves? To avoid arousing suspicion within the Empire, the forces you divert can't be too significant. Relying on them alone to exchange for the resources on this list is far from sufficient." The woman in green replied calmly, "Your Excellency, you misunderstand. As the seeds of the Empire's civilization, all the technology the Empire currently possesses will naturally be preserved. After joining the association, these technologies can be shared with the organization. Let's not even mention the rest, but the value of the beast god armor alone is enough to cover most of the resources on this list." Li Fan hadn't expected them to be so bold, willing to use all the technology at their disposal as bargaining chips. Even if all technologies they spoke of were slightly exaggerated, the various elements of the Empire that Li Fan had seen in Li Qinfeng's mind were enough to make him tempted. Indeed, these technologies might not directly benefit Li Fan's cultivation. But the Empire's system, so different from the current Xuanwang realm, could greatly enhance Li Fan's foundation. As the saying goes, the more skills you have, the fewer worries you'll face. Perhaps in some future cycle, this ability to control exotic beasts would come in handy. Without much hesitation, Li Fan quickly made up his mind. He would trick the Empire into handing over all its technology. Feigning a hesitant yet interested look, Li Fan pondered for a moment before saying, "This is a significant matter, beyond my authority to decide. Allow me to report back, and I'll give you an answer." Li Fan's response was within the woman in green's expectations. "The sooner, the better," she urged. Li Fan cupped his hands in farewell and quickly left. In the secret chamber, only the Empire's group remained. "Saint Master, do we really have to use the core technologies the Empire has developed over so many years as bargaining chips?" Li Qinfeng asked reluctantly. The woman in green did not immediately respond. Instead, she frowned and looked up at the sky. After laying down several layers of restrictions, she turned to Li Qinfeng and scolded, "Have you forgotten what I taught you? Survival is the primary objective of civilization. Only by surviving do technology and culture have meaning. If the civilization itself is destroyed, what use are these achievements, no matter how glorious?" Li Qinfeng was still somewhat dissatisfied, but the woman in green cut him off with a wave of her hand. "We've already discussed this with the Imperial Princess and reached a final decision. No more arguments." Seeing this, Li Qinfeng had no choice but to bow his head in resignation. "That person just now, I couldn't see through him. And he's just a messenger. It seems that this Federation of All Worlds truly has some depth," the woman in green murmured as she watched Li Fan's figure disappear into the distance. Li Qinfeng was startled. "Saint Master, even with your cultivation, you couldn't discern his background. What is that man's true strength?" The woman in green was also puzzled. "On the surface, his realm doesn't seem very high, but I could always sense a faint trace of danger from him." Chapter 444. Besides, it seems that he has many secret techniques concealing him, making it difficult for others to see through him. like looking at flowers in the mist, the woman in the green dress said slowly. Hearing this, Li Chenfeng and Zhu Xiaotang exchanged glances, their hearts filled with shock. They were well aware that the Empire's two Saint Masters, Qing and Hong, were powerful beings who had survived since ancient times. The two Saint Masters had personally witnessed the Empire's development from a mere gathering of mortals to the vast empire it is today. Their guidance had been indispensable in this process. In the eyes of the Empire's people, the two Saint Masters were the absolute embodiments of power and wisdom. But now, the Saint Master Qing actually said that she could not see through the envoy who had just arrived. Recalling their previous rash behavior in front of this person, Li Chenfeng couldn't help but feel a wave of fear. Perhaps it's because I haven't returned here for so long. I am somewhat unaccustomed to it, Qing sighed with a hint of sadness, allowing Li Chenfeng to breathe a little easier. Hundreds of miles away, Li Fan was secretly surprised as he sensed the intermittent, blurry images transmitted by the formless killing intent. It seems this Saint Master is not simple. She can vaguely sense and counteract my formless killing intent. Fortunately, my skills are superior. Li Fan was more than willing to exchange contribution points for the Empire's technology, such as the Beast God armor. But if a true collaboration were to be established and the play continued, he feared he alone wouldn't be able to hold the stage, making it easy for others to see through him. Moreover, managing 5 million contribution points was somewhat difficult. It seems it's time to advance my original plan. With that in mind, Li Fan sensed the location of He Zhenghao. While heading toward Luli Island, he once again transformed into the appearance of an ancient heavenly mechanism sect disciple. He Zhenghao had been feeling troubled lately. He had locked the communication talisman, which was constantly receiving inquiries, inside a storage ring to gain some peace. At present, he did not even dare step out of Luli Island. As the legend of his overnight wealth spread, more and more people wanted to gather information about Li Fan through him. Some were skeptical and wanted to personally verify the master's credentials. Others merely wanted to latch onto him and replicate He Zhenghao's meteoric rise. Some even approached him with bizarre propositions, attempting to engage in strange deals. He was overwhelmed and exhausted by all the attention. He had to pretend to be in seclusion, hiding within the mountains and stars formation on Luli Island, unable to meet anyone. He Zhenghao was deeply troubled. It wasn't that he was deliberately avoiding people, but ever since joining the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, that heavenly mechanism sect senior had vanished, and he hadn't been able to see him again. He Zhenghao was utterly helpless. As he was frowning, wondering how to explain himself to his close friends, a faintly familiar aura rapidly approached. It passed through the mountain and star formation's defenses and immediately landed boldly before him. Ha ha ha, he boy, long time no see. Li Fan laughed heartily, his voice full of spring-like cheer. He Zhenghao was first stunned, then overjoyed. It was just as he had wished. Senior, you have finally come. He nearly wanted to hug Li Fan's leg and weep in gratitude. What's wrong with you, boy? With a slight wave of his hand, Li Fan kept He Zhenghao several feet away and asked knowingly. After He Zhenghao finished pouring out his troubles, Li Fan immediately collected his smile and scolded him, you deserve it. You are a foundation establishment cultivator, and yet you don't understand the principle of getting rich quietly. You obtained a nascent soul cultivation method, you should have practiced diligently instead of showing off to others. If only your close friends knew, it might have been okay, but you made it public knowledge. If you die, that's one thing, but you dragged me into it too. Li Fan's beard and hair stood on end, and he appeared extremely furious. He Zhenghao trembled, too afraid to speak. Li Fan shook his head, looking at He Zhenghao with a gaze full of disappointment, like one who sees a child with no hope. He made a gesture as if to fly away. He Zhenghao panicked immediately. Senior, please wait. Senior, save me. He cried with a mournful face, explaining, I did not intentionally want to show off. Perhaps it was the result of fulfilling a long-held wish, and I could not control my emotions that day. By the time I realized it, the news had already spread, and it was too late to regret. In truth, He Zhenghao's willpower wasn't so weak. While excitement and impulsiveness played a role, much of it was due to Li Fan's subtle manipulation and guidance that day. Seeing He Zhenghao's deep regret, Li Fan laughed inwardly but kept a stern face. In a cold voice, he said, "A save you. How can I save you? As the saying goes, a mercy does not save those who seek death. A if you are determined to court death, how can I help you? A." He Zhenghao's expression grew more miserable, but seeing that Li Fan had flown away immediately, he knew there was still hope. So he quickly said, "The reason these friends are pestering me is merely because they want to gain the Signora's guidance, just as I did, and profit from it. A. Senior, you can use your divine ability to sense the secrets of the heavens and Thena A." Li Fan's face turned cold. Nonsense. Why should I help them when they are neither kin nor acquaintances? Moreover, using divine abilities comes with the risk of heavenly backlash. What's in it for me? With a wave of his sleeve, Li Fan looked dissatisfied and was about to leave. He Zhenghao hurriedly blocked his way and had a sudden inspiration, saying repeatedly, "A mountain sitting technique. Mountain sitting technique. When I broke through to the late foundation establishment stage, did you sense the feedback in your cultivation?" Li Fan was slightly stunned and, after a while, slowly said, "It does seem like there was something like that. He Zhenghao slapped his thigh. Exactly. Senior, think about it. In the current 10,000 Immortal Alliance, all techniques are exchanged for contribution points. And when you help us earn contribution points, we use them to purchase techniques and cultivate. Doesn't this mean you are indirectly bestowing us with techniques? You must know, in the current cultivation world, nothing is more significant than bestowing techniques. As you practice the mountain sitting technique, such a blessing will surely yield strong cultivation feedback. Furthermore, there are many who have come to seek your aid. If you help them all accumulating bit by bit, how much cultivation power would that add up to? With this, Master, you should soon recover your strength from before your slumber, right? He Zhenghao seemed to have an epiphany and became more excited as he spoke. Li Fan slowly nodded. There is some logic to that. Buddha, with so many people, my ability to use divine power is limited. How can I help them all? After thinking it over, Li Fan still rejected the idea. At that moment, He Zhenghao had a sudden flash of insight. He blurted out, "We can pool together the contribution points of those who want your help and manage them collectively. Then, when Master uses your divine power to find suitable investment methods and earn contribution points, you can return them." Li Fan was very pleased, thinking to himself, "Very good, He Zhenghao, you have learned to respond quickly. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone Translation Chapter 445. However, Li Fan's face was full of doubt. Would others really transfer their contribution points so easily? I don't think so. It would be better if they don't. This way, we can use it as an excuse to get rid of some of them, so they stop pestering me. He Zhenghao thought to himself, but he said aloud, "Senior, don't worry, too many cultivators have been chasing me recently to ask about this. Even if only a small portion is willing to transfer their contribution points for you to handle, it will still be a considerable amount. Moreover, once Senior displays his divine abilities and returns the contribution points with interest, the results will speak louder than words. Afterward, there will definitely be more and more people willing to rely on Senior." He Zhenghao was full of confidence. Li Fan pondered for a moment, pretending to think it over. Not long after, he slowly nodded. "It just so happens that I've been seeing many new and interesting techniques in the Tianquan mirror recently, and I'm itching to try them out. Moreover, in this era of cultivation, it's true that everything relies on contribution points. If you can really gather a significant amount of contribution points, I don't mind making it grow several times over." Hearing Li Fan's casual words, He Zhenghao's eyes lit up. He thought for a moment and quickly urged, "No need for so much, no need for so much. You must know, if it can increase by half in a year, people will flock to hand over their contribution points to Senior. As for the rest, Senior can keep it for yourself as a reward. Of course, if you could share some of the profits with me as a token of appreciation, that would be even better." He Zhenghao said happily, satisfied with just a 50% return in a year. Li Fan was initially surprised, then nodded, that works too. Let's tentatively decide on this for now. You go and contact your friends. Remember, you must choose those who you know well. Contribution points from cultivators with unknown backgrounds should not be accepted. After giving a few more instructions, He Zhenghao excitedly took out the sealed communication talisman and began replying to each person. Fellow Taoist Zhang, there's a great opportunity for wealth in front of you. Would you like to give it a try? The first batch of contribution points probably won't be much, but that's okay. If they don't believe it the first time, they might hesitate the second time. By the third or fourth time, when they see others making a fortune while they miss out on the opportunity. By the fifth time, they'll be begging to hand over their contribution points. Watching the busy He Zhenghao, Li Fan thought to himself. Don't misunderstand, although what Li Fan is doing in this world looks very much like some kind of scam, in reality, Li Fan really does have the ability to lead everyone to make big money. Not to mention the huge profits he could easily gain by speculating on Lingwu grass. Simply using the information he gathered during his endless cycles of reincarnation, buying low and selling high, making a 50% profit each year was child's play. If certain gifted individuals can do it, there's no way Li Fan, an anomaly in this cycle of reincarnation, couldn't. If that were the case, Li Fan might as well give up on seeking immortality and obediently return to Great Zan to be Immortal Grand Master for the rest of his life. In short, increasing assets is not difficult at all for Li Fan, who holds so much advanced information. Of course, there are certain limitations. For example, the overall scale of assets he controls shouldn't be too large. And he shouldn't attract the direct intervention of powers on the level of the Tianquan mirror. But in reality, Li Fan never planned to make too much noise. His goal was simply to gather a manageable group of followers while improving his cultivation through the mountain sitting technique. And when the expansion became too overwhelming and was beyond Li Fan's control, crimson flames will engulf the ocean, and ink-like darkness will consume the world. That would be the end of it. With all the creditors dead, naturally, there would be no debts to settle. He could then rightfully claim all those contribution points as his own. This is the preliminary plan. As for the details, he'll take it step by step. After contacting his friends, He Zhenghao went to 10,000 Immortal Island to meet with his fellow Taoists. It wasn't until most of the day had passed that he returned with a beaming face. He also brought back over 200,000 contribution points. As expected, when He Zhenghao stated his request, most of the cultivators backed out. After all, no one's contribution points are easy to come by. It's one thing to receive guidance from an ancient heavenly mechanism sect cultivator, but to actually hand over their contribution points. Few were willing to do that. The 200,000 contribution points gathered this time mainly came from a cultivator named Zhou Peng, who alone contributed 50,000, taking up the majority. Excluding him, the rest of the contributors averaged less than 5,000 points each. Even so, He Zhenghao was extremely excited at this moment. He solemnly transferred the 230,000 contribution points to Li Fan through the small Tianquan mirror. He also didn't forget to transfer another 100,000 contribution points from his own small vault. Senior. He Zhenghao opened his mouth to say something but eventually held back. He simply looked at Li Fan with a burning gaze. 50,000 contribution points in a year is no big deal. Rest assured, Li Fan said as he tossed a communication talisman to He Zhenghao. If there's anything urgent, I'll contact you. Otherwise, don't disturb me. He Zhenghao nodded repeatedly, excitedly holding onto the communication talisman. Li Fan waved him off and returned to 10,000 Immortal Island. There shouldn't be any problems. He Zhenghao muttered to himself. Now that the initial excitement had passed, a more rational He Zhenghao couldn't help but feel uneasy. But now that the matter has been settled, he can only pray that this senior from the Heavenly Mechanism sect won't make any mistakes. Inside the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan released several scrolls of Lan Shao's posthumous works. While procuring the necessary materials for the empire, he patiently waited. Sure enough, 3 days later, the oracle contacted Li Fan to express his gratitude. I still have some rare books here, but I need Senior to do me a small favor. Li Fan said with a smile. Oh, the oracle was slightly surprised but still listened with interest to Li Fan's request. Interesting. It seemed that this fellow was involved in something shady. But the oracle didn't care about that. In this world, who doesn't have some secrets? With a gentle wave of his dust whisk, the oracle concealed his aura and quietly arrived at 10,000 Immortal Island. After meeting with Li Fan, the two flew directly toward the island where the Empire's people were located. In a secret chamber, the Empire's Imperial Saint Master, Qing, who was concentrating on drawing something, suddenly stood up and looked in the direction where Li Fan was coming from, her expression serious. When Li Fan and the oracle landed on the island, her face changed slightly. The Federation of All Worlds indeed has some weight. Chapter 446. Before Qing could speak, the oracle swung his dust whisk. The sky darkened, and a talisman filled with golden characters appeared instantly above the island. It blotted out the sky and the sun, as if it was about to suppress everyone in the Empire the next moment. Qing's expression changed drastically. Two blue beams of light shot up into the sky like sharp blades. They collided with the massive talisman. The golden talisman was torn apart, revealing the sky once again. However, the golden characters on the talisman didn't disappear. Instead, they floated down, drifting towards the ground. Blades of light continuously emerged from Qing's body. One by one, the characters were dispelled. It was clear that both sides were extremely restrained in their exchange. The phenomena they triggered were confined to the area around the island, not affecting bystanders like Li Fan, Li Qinfeng, and others in the slightest. After a moment, when Qing had fully suppressed the oracle's golden talisman, she forced down her anger and was about to question his intentions. But she noticed that the mysterious person who had cast the talisman had already spoken something to Li Fan and left on his own. Qing narrowed her eyes slightly but did not stop him. She watched as Li Fan approached boldly. "What does your Federation of All Worlds mean by this?" Only then did Qing ask coldly. Li Fan shrugged. "We mean no harm, but since we're going to cooperate, it's only natural to test your strength and see if you're worth it. Fortunately, you've barely gained recognition from above." Qing snorted coldly, staring at Li Fan. Li Fan remained unfazed, smiling as he said, "The Federation has agreed to your previous proposal for cooperation. We'll help the Empire accelerate its plan to break away from the Xuanwang realm, but in return, you need to allocate some of your forces to join the Federation." However, Li Fan paused slightly. "Considering the current situation of both sides, the organization believes that we can gradually implement the cooperation plan." "How do you plan to proceed gradually?" Qing's tone softened. Li Fan tossed a storage ring over. Qing caught it and, after checking it, was taken aback. Inside were all sorts of resources the Empire needed. Green spirit crystals, 10,000 flower jade silk, arm of profound sage. Although the quantities were small, each type was present. Having been away from the Xuanwang realm for thousands of years, she didn't know the current market prices. But Qing also knew that the value of the materials in this storage ring was certainly not insignificant. So, her expression gradually softened. "This is the first batch of supplies. The quantities you require are enormous. To avoid attracting attention from the forces of the Xuanwang realm, we're only purchasing them in small batches." Li Fan explained. Qing found the explanation reasonable and nodded slowly. "At the same time, we're also looking for a future foothold for the Empire's branch. Both safety and secrecy must be absolutely guaranteed. In the current Xuanwang realm, such a place is hard to find. So, it will take some time." Li Fan continued. "To alleviate your concerns and demonstrate the organization's sincerity, these materials are provided to the Empire for free. Around a year from now, when the next batch of materials is procured, I'll come back. But by then, the Federation of All Worlds hopes to see the Empire's attitude. Then we'll discuss the next steps of our cooperation." Li Fan cupped his hands, and without waiting for Qing's response, he left directly. "Saint Master." Li Qinfeng looked at Qing, wanting to speak but hesitating. Qing frowned and carefully examined the storage ring again. After finding no tricks, she cautiously put it away. For now, it seems their intention to cooperate is quite sincere. He wasn't wrong. We can gradually start cooperating. First, exchange some of the less important technologies with them. If anything goes wrong, we can stop the losses in time." Qing said to Li Qinfeng and the others. "I need to return and discuss this further with the Imperial Princess in Hong." What she didn't say was that, for some reason, she always felt there was something strange about the messenger from the Federation. It seemed far more complicated than it appeared on the surface. 10,000 Immortal Island. After thanking the oracle again, Li Fan, as usual, began searching for information in the Tianquan mirror. The results of the entrance exam had been gradually announced, with some rejoicing and others lamenting. There was still considerable controversy over some of the positions, selections. However, the disputes quickly disappeared. In the southwest sea of Kanyan Sea, a storm ravaged the area, causing the disappearance of more than a dozen mortal islands. The price of the specialty product, Bishuan Du, saw a slight fluctuation. Li Fan bought low and sold high, making a small profit. In Taihua Prefecture, one of the 10 veins of the Taihua Mountain, the Taishu Mountain range suddenly collapsed for unknown reasons. When Li Fan skimmed over this piece of information, his gaze sharpened slightly. The 10 veins of Taihua Mountain. I remember in previous lives there were only 9 veins of Taihua. It seems the casualties this time were quite severe. Li Fan pondered but didn't delve deeper. He simply marked it as a priority and continued browsing other important news. Afterward, Li Fan separately searched for the latest information on Old Fisherman, Martial Madman, Zhang Shentong, and Shuo Feng. The Old Fisherman was still wandering near the central 4 prefectures of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Martial Madman and Zhang Shentong had not yet made a name for themselves. Shuofeng had not yet restarted his cultivation, still renowned as a nascent soul true lord. Li Fan, based on his experiences from previous lives, speculated on the likely timing of their encounters with opportunities. A month later, Li Fan woke up from his seclusion. Feeling that the time was right, he directly transferred 500,000 contribution points to He Zhenghao. This time, I was lucky. I quickly sensed the opportunity and completed the goal early. Li Fan spoke lazily. A moment later, He Zhenghao's voice, filled with ecstatic surprise, came through. Senior's divine abilities are truly incredible. Hey, the sect's secret technique still carries unavoidable backlash. The next recruitment will still be at the previously agreed time. Make sure to explain this to them clearly. After giving some instructions, Li Fan stopped paying attention to He Zhenghao and swallowed an enlightenment pill, going back into seclusion. Time flew by quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was year 9 since the starting of Anchor. During this period, Li Fan's plans began to show initial results. More than 20 strands of feedback, of varying amounts, began to appear in Li Fan's dantian one after another. Coupled with nearly a year's worth of arduous cultivation under the dual effects of the Spirit Awakening and Tao Enlightenment pills, Li Fan reached the peak of the mid-stage golden core and, fortunately, was only troubled by the heaven's calamity bottleneck for a little over 10 days. Then, he smoothly advanced to the late stage of the golden core. Li Fan slowly exhaled, pausing his cultivation. From now on, whether it's to intimidate the people of the empire or to explore the void of Tianling Prefecture, it's hard to manage everything alone. Perhaps it's time to find some assistance. Li Fan pondered for a moment, then quietly left 10,000 Immortal Island. He headed straight for Tianyang Cave Mansion. Along the way, he tried dozens of times and finally managed to barely create a face that resembled the second senior brother of Tianyang, Ling Xiao. Read extra chapters on greater than Spirit Stone Translation Chapter 447. 9 years have passed, and the Tianyang Cave Mansion has yet to be revealed. It remains deeply hidden within an underwater volcano, known to no one else. After much effort, Li Fan was able to determine the location of the cave mansion using the Earth-Fire Return to Origin array he acquired from Tianyang's remnant thoughts. After activating several protective talismans, Li Fan carefully infiltrated the cave mansion. Currently, Lord Tianyang is in a peculiar state, neither fully alive nor dead. From the Eternal Remnant's memories, Li Fan learned that when the re-establishing the body and transforming into the Tao was initiated, everyone except Tianyang participated in an ancient battle and never returned. Tianyang, however, firmly believed that his master and senior brothers would return. Afraid they wouldn't find him upon their return, Tianyang stayed in the cave mansion, refusing to leave. But years later, outsiders broke into the cave mansion. Tianyang wanted to resist but was no match for them. He barely managed to survive thanks to the magical artifacts left behind by his senior brothers before they departed. After that, young Tianyang began a wandering life in the world of immortal cultivation. Through trials and tribulations, he gradually realized that his potential was far from being as exceptional as his senior brothers had claimed. He was not the hope for the revival of the re-establishing the body and transforming into the Tao. He could not even match ordinary golden core cultivators, let alone his senior brothers. But despite this, his master and senior brothers placed their last hopes in him. Whenever he remembered their words, Tianyang, your potential is not inferior to anyone in this world. Recover quickly, as the re-establishing the body and transforming into the Tao depends on you. He couldn't help but feel immense hatred toward his own incompetence. But reality doesn't change with emotions. Tianyang estimated that without any extraordinary encounters, reaching the golden core stage would be his limit. To fulfill the expectations of his master and senior brothers, Tianyang decided to risk everything and use a method of discarding his physical body to fully transform himself into a puppet, in an attempt to defy fate. His entire later life was spent preparing for this. He searched for suitable locations to set up the Earth Fire Return to Origin array, collected materials, and crafted puppets. Once everything was ready, Tianyang resolutely completed his transformation into a puppet. He then entered a deep sleep within the Earth's veins, intending to use the power of the Earth Fire to temper the puppet, allowing it to evolve. If everything went as planned, Tianyang would have completed his transformation within 500 years, becoming a powerful entity on par with Soul Transformation True Monarch. But fate had other plans. Over 500 years, the world changed drastically. Shifting Earth veins caused the Earth Fire Return to Origin array to lose much of its effectiveness, and the materials Tianyang initially used to craft the puppet were ordinary at best. This resulted in the puppet's evolution process being exceptionally slow. The anticipated 500 years turned into several thousand years. As time passed, even in his sleep, Tianyang's consciousness gradually eroded. He lost most of his will, leaving only the obsession of, Tianyang's life is not weaker than others. Li Fan guessed that the heaven-flipping palm, which had turned the Kongyan mountain range into the Kongyan Sea, might have been the cause of Tianyang's failure. Tianyang's life was unfortunate. Li Fan shook his head and arrived at the plaza outside the cave mansion. After carefully observing for a moment, Li Fan's figure became as elusive as a ghost. He transformed into a thin line, twisting and turning, safely passing through. Without triggering any traps or mechanisms, Li Fan successfully reached the depths of the cave mansion. There, sitting was a small child's skeleton. In reality, due to Tianyang's congenital deficiency never being remedied, he remained the size of a child. Li Fan approached cautiously, keeping his guard up. Suddenly, creaking sounds echoed from the ground below. Li Fan's heart stirred, and he quickly retreated. 17 black and red puppets emerged and charged toward him. Li Fan activated the Tao transforming technique and shouted, "Little junior brother, don't you recognize me?" The puppets ignored him, attacking relentlessly. They all launched their assaults on Li Fan. Fortunately, they had the characteristic of becoming weaker when facing a weaker opponent and stronger when facing a stronger one. A sword light forced the puppets back. Li Fan moved between them, continuously calling out Tianyang's name. Gradually, the puppets' movements became hesitant. At this moment, Li Fan took out a projection stone, and projected Ling Xiao's last work into the air. Finally, the puppets stopped attacking. They looked up at the text and images in the air. "Second, senior, brother," a slightly sluggish mechanical voice rang out. Li Fan laughed, "Little junior brother, it's been 1,000 years. How have you been?" "Second, senior brother." Bang! Cracks appeared on the 17 puppets' bodies, and then they shattered like broken porcelain. The scattered fragments dissolved and squirmed, eventually forming a small Tianyang puppet. It flew in front of Li Fan, tilting its head and examining him. Seeing the somewhat unfamiliar man before him, Tianyang appeared confused. Li Fan patted Tianyang's shoulder and said, "Come on, let senior brother take you home." The Tianyang puppet was stunned. A roaring sound came from the depths of the sea, and the ground trembled as if something was about to break through. Li Fan chuckled, "Junior brother, don't be so excited. The outside world is still full of bad people. It wouldn't be good if they found us." As if understanding Li Fan's words, the puppet nodded after a long pause. In an instant, the seabed returned to silence. With Li Fan's help, it took 3 days for Tianyang to retrieve all the broken body components buried deep underground. They were reassembled into one, and he quietly followed Li Fan. Li Fan used a secret technique to conceal their auras. He also took Tianyang's remains, which carried eternal remnant memories, from the cave mansion. The two of them traveled quickly and arrived at the nameless deserted island where the people who left the world in the previous life lived. It took more than 10 days for Li Fan to create a simple cave mansion, modeled after the original, re-establishing the body and transforming into the Tao sect. After setting up concealment and protective formation, Li Fan looked at Tianyang and instructed, "Little junior brother, wait for me here. I'll be back soon." Tianyang obediently nodded. After Li Fan left, Tianyang went to his original room and quietly sat down. Inside the Tianshuan mirror, waking up Tianyang a few years earlier does have some drawbacks. He hasn't fully completed his tempering, so there's still a bit of a gap before reaching the peak of soul transformation. But I can help him complete it. After researching for a while, with the purchase of rare materials, contribution points were spent like flowing water. 2 days later, Li Fan returned to the nameless island with several storage rings full of supplies. Gray mysterious diamond, willow-touched mysterious stone, scarlet spirit copper. Little junior brother, these are materials your body can absorb to strengthen yourself. As for your daily routine, stay within this return to origin formation. It will aid in your tempering. Li Fan carefully guided Tianyang. Tianyang listened attentively. Chapter 448. At this moment, the Tianyang puppet was still acting purely on instinct. It took Li Fan quite some effort to teach it how to use the return to origin formation to temper and strengthen itself. Fortunately, Tianyang was entirely obedient to his senior brother, Li Fan. Even the most clumsy student will eventually learn with enough practice. Seeing Tianyang gradually become more proficient, Li Fan felt a sense of relief. If someone comes to disturb you, don't kill them. Just capture and imprison them, and wait for me to return to deal with it. If you encounter someone you can't defeat, don't be reckless. Slip away quietly and meet up with me later to discuss our next move. After giving Tianyang a few instructions, Li Fan flew out and sealed the cave. The strongest combat forces on the surface of Kanyan Sea are just a few soul transformation true monarch. Now that I have junior brother Tianyang backing me up, I can do a lot more. Looking down at the unnamed island below, Li Fan smiled faintly. From now on, I'll call you Shenhua Island. Once Tianyang completes his own repairs, I can also have him help refine mechanical puppets. If materials aren't scarce, creating a few nascent soul-level puppets shouldn't be too difficult. Although mechanical puppets can't be compared to true nascent soul cultivators, they are advantageous in that they don't tire and can overwhelm with sheer numbers. The more Li Fan thought about it, the happier he felt. After a while, he calmed himself and retrieved Tianyang's remains from his storage ring. He still received the prompt that truth could absorb it, but that familiar hunger was no longer there. After considering it, Li Fan ultimately decided not to absorb it. I've already obtained everything I can from Tianyang's remnant memories. Absorbing it again wouldn't be very meaningful. It's better to keep it. Who knows, it might come in handy later. Cultivators in the Xuanwang realm surely have ways to utilize eternal remnants' memories. However, even in his previous life, when he reached the level 30, authority level, he hadn't found any relevant information. Speaking of eternal remnants, Li Fan couldn't help but think of the skull of the first cultivator infected by the mortal immortal plague that he had seen in his previous life. Maybe it was precisely because it was attached to an eternal remnant that it was placed at the center of the Divine Treasury Museum. Collecting his thoughts, Li Fan did not return to 10,000 Immortal Island but instead quietly arrived outside Luli Island. Finding the giant luli fish, Li Fan concealed his aura and descended to the seabed. He didn't act immediately but waited for something. Time passed slowly, and when the moment arrived, matching the note in previous lifetimes when Li Fan re-entered the cultivation world and used the formless killing intent to kill the giant luli fish, he replicated the process and retrieved the exquisite luminous azure pearl. With an ample supply of enlightenment pills, now, the luli pearl had become somewhat redundant. But Li Fan didn't kill the giant luli fish for the pearl. He did it to ensure the attack on Lingwukao Island and the series of subsequent chain events would occur. The reason for waiting until the anchor of the 8th year to act was to avoid the impact of any deviations from the time node. Everything in the world is in a constant state of dynamic evolution, interconnected with one another. His early arrival in the Xuanwang realm was like a stone falling into a pond, affecting many things. Li Fan couldn't guarantee that the events from previous lifetimes wouldn't change in this one. All he could do was minimize the deviations as much as possible. Stirring up the spirit mist grass incident is critical to the Tianling Continent War, True Monarch Jicheng's bounty, and the emergence of the Tianshuan spirit lock formation. It must not fail. If it really doesn't work. The giant lily fish was reduced to nothing in an instant, with streams of blood drifting upward. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in Li Fan's eyes. After finishing this task, Li Fan made another trip, collecting 2 blue-blooded corals. Although that bit of contribution was insignificant to Li Fan now, it allowed him to connect with Chen Ying, a nascent soul cultivator from the medicine hall. And this person would soon head to the 5 Elements' Great Cave Heaven. As long as he used the formless killing intent to monitor him, Li Fan would be the first to know when the Tianling continent war erupted, giving him the opportunity to take advantage of the chaos. Returning to the Tianshuan mirror, Li Fan chose to submit the task. He also inquired whether the other party was refining the ice intent heartless pill. Can you infer what pill I'm refining with just one main ingredient? Are you, by any chance, skilled in this field? Chen Ying asked, curious. As expected, his interest was piqued, and Chen Ying sent an inquiry. Haha, I don't know much about alchemy. I just know a bit about deducing and calculating. Li Fan replied with a smile. I wish to explore the fallen immortal realm, and I have a feeling that the pill you are refining might be helpful. Hence, my inquiry. Chen Ying exclaimed, is the art of deduction really that mysterious? Wait, could you be that ancient cultivator from the heavenly mechanism sect who woke up from slumber? At that moment, seeing Li Fan's name, Chen Ying suddenly recalled something and asked in surprise. Haha, that's me, but it's just an empty reputation. You don't need to take it seriously. Li Fan responded humbly. But Chen Ying was thoroughly intrigued. He insisted on meeting Li Fan in person and even offered to give him some ice intent heartless pills, for free. Feigning reluctance, Li Fan eventually agreed. They arranged to meet at Chen Ying's residence on 10,000 Immortal Island. It was well known that cultivators could purchase caves on 10,000 Immortal Island to live in. However, the price was not cheap. None of the Kongyan Sea cultivators Li Fan had befriended in previous lifetimes had indulged in such luxury. Even Zhang Ziliang hadn't splurged on a residence to enjoy himself. It seems alchemy is more profitable than formations, Li Fan mused as he arrived in front of Chen Ying's cave. Sensing Li Fan's arrival, a green door suddenly opened. What seemed like a simple, small residence from the outside turned out to be an entirely different world upon entering. It was like stepping into a valley, where many different kinds of herbs and spiritual plants grew in the extensive spirit fields. The concentration of spiritual energy in the valley wasn't particularly high, and Li Fan didn't see anyone tending to the plants. Yet all these spiritual herbs and plants were thriving. Li Fan guessed that it might have something to do with the layers of different colored restrictions that envelop the spirit fields. Ah, Taoist Li Fan, you finally made it. Chen Ying's hearty laughter echoed from afar. Li Fan looked over and saw him emerging from a patch of crops taller than a person. Ignoring his somewhat disheveled appearance, Chen Ying flew straight toward Li Fan. 8 mystical grass, but the ordinary kind isn't usually this tall. I've heard that Chen Ying is not only skilled in alchemy but also very adept at cultivating spiritual plants. Seeing it today, his reputation is well deserved. Li Fan's mind became more active. Taoist Chen Ying, it's a pleasure to meet you. He greeted warmly with cupped hands. Suddenly, his expression changed, and he stared intently at Chen Ying. Chen Ying was taken aback and touched his face, feeling puzzled. What's the matter, Taoist Li Fan? Seeing Li Fan's serious expression, he couldn't help but ask. I observed your face and feared that you might face a bloody disaster in the near future. Li Fan shook his head and said in a deep tone. Chapter 449. Bloody disaster. Chen Ying was taken aback, watching Li Fan's serious expression. Where did you get that idea? Chen Ying asked, half believing, half doubting, as he had not expected this ancient heavenly mechanism sect cultivator to give him such a surprise upon their first meeting. Li Fan didn't immediately answer. Instead, he closed his eyes, furrowed his brows, and started calculating with his fingers. Seeing this, Chen Ying stood aside, not daring to disturb him. The divination lasted for as long as it takes an incense stick to burn. Li Fan's breathing was erratic, and his face grew paler by the minute. This made Chen Ying nervous as well. Suddenly, Li Fan opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Fellow Taoist Li Fan, are you all right? Chen Ying was startled and stepped forward to check on him. It's nothing serious, just a little backlash. Li Fan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and waved his hand. Before Chen Ying could react, Li Fan looked at him intently and asked, Fellow Taoist Chen, are you planning to go on a long journey soon? Chen Ying was first stunned, then shocked. Not long ago, he had indeed received orders from headquarters to go to a newly discovered wood element cave. But he hadn't mentioned this to anyone yet, so how did Li Fan know? Could it be that he really saw something through his divination? Chen Ying quickly took out a vital qi consolidation pill, and handed it to Li Fan. Fellow Taoist, please take this pill, it can help alleviate your injuries. After Li Fan swallowed it and his complexion improved, Chen Ying asked solemnly, it's true, I do have to leave Kongyansi soon. Is the blood calamity you mentioned related to this journey? Li Fan slowly nodded, if you return early, it should be fine. The longer you stay outside, the more dangerous it will become. Chen Ying's heart sank. This mission would definitely take at least 10 years, if not longer, to complete. Does that mean that if he goes, he is doomed to face great danger? The thought of defying orders crossed Chen Ying's mind. But it was only a thought. The orders from the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance were not something a small nascent soul cultivator like him could refuse. Is there no escape, only a path to death? No wonder he'd been feeling uneasy recently but couldn't pinpoint the reason. It turned out to be this. Chen Ying's face turned extremely grim. After a moment, he looked at Li Fan, who was standing nearby, and had an idea. This journey cannot be avoided. I beg you, fellow Taoist, to save me. Chen Ying pleaded with a hopeful expression. Li Fan sighed softly, understanding the will of heaven is easy, defying it is difficult. I can barely glimpse the secrets of the future, but to change one's fate against the heavens. You're asking a lot from me. However, I can give you some advice. I can't guarantee it will work, but you can try. Just as Chen Ying was feeling extremely disappointed, Li Fan suddenly changed his tone. Chen Ying was overjoyed, please tell me, fellow Taoist. Li Fan first sized up Chen Ying, then asked, forgive me for being blunt, but in a life and death struggle, how strong are you? Chen Ying's face showed some embarrassment, as they say, each to their own expertise. I'm good at alchemy and nurturing plants, but fighting. Chen Ying shook his head. Li Fan asked again, if you were ambushed, how strong is your ability to protect yourself? Do you have any defense mechanisms, stealth techniques, or escape methods prepared? The 10,000 Immortal Alliance has been peaceful for a long time, and have always been on good terms with others. I didn't think I'd need those things. Chen Ying answered honestly. Li Fan sighed deeply, that's it. You have no sense of caution. If disaster strikes suddenly and you're unprepared, you're bound to fall. If this calamity cannot be avoided, you'll have to face it head-on. I see that you're wealthy enough to buy such a cave dwelling on 10,000 Immortal Island. The only way now is to spend money to avoid disaster. In the Tianquan Mirror, there are many defensive treasures and techniques. You must not be stingy, buy as much as you can and strengthen yourself. If you can hold off an attack from a cultivator of the Dao integration stage for even a moment, you might find a chance to survive. Li Fan spoke earnestly. The attack of an Dao integration stage immortal sage. Chen Ying was startled. With the contribution points he had accumulated over the years, he might be able to afford 1 or 2 treasures that could withstand an Dao integration stage attack. But those were meant for him to exchange for an Dao integration stage cultivation method. If the calamity Li Fan mentioned didn't happen, it would be a huge waste of contribution points. He'd have to start from scratch again. Isn't this a bit? Chen Ying couldn't help but ask, but he saw Li Fan subtly shake his head. I've said all I can. Whether you believe it or not is up to you. It has nothing to do with me now. Li Fan turned to leave. Chen Ying hurriedly stopped him. Fellow Taoist, you came in such a hurry, how can you leave in such a hurry? Your life-saving grace will be repaid later. For now, let me show you some hospitality. Suppressing all his conflicting thoughts, Chen Ying took Li Fan on a tour of his cave dwelling. After introducing him to the unique forbidden method he had developed for nurturing spiritual plants, Chen Ying personally refined a batch of pills in front of Li Fan. During their conversations, Chen Ying discovered that this man truly was an ancient cultivator. His knowledge was vast, and although he didn't specialize in alchemy, his understanding of herbal properties was profound, with some insights even benefiting Chen Ying. Li Fan stayed in Chen Ying's cave dwelling for 7 days before finally taking his leave, much to Chen Ying's reluctance. Before departing, Chen Ying generously gifted a bottle of Insight Enlightened pills to Li Fan. This pill was specially refined by him and had remarkable effects when used during the breakthrough from the golden core to the nascent soul stage. The materials were rare, and the success rate was extremely low. Chen Ying himself didn't have much in stock and usually didn't sell them, instead using them as gifts in special circumstances. He only gave it to Li Fan because he noticed that Li Fan's cultivation had recovered to the late golden core stage and that he was about to form his nascent soul again, a gesture of reciprocation. This man is not a fraud, he truly has real knowledge. After sending Li Fan off, Chen Ying pondered to himself. A blood calamity, it's just some contribution points. If I lose them, I can earn more. At worst, I'll just have to work harder and refine more pills. But if I die, everything is over. It's better to believe in it than not. With this in mind, Chen Ying made up his mind. He opened the Tianquan mirror in his cave dwelling and began searching. I wonder if Chen Ying will survive. After leaving the cave dwelling, with multiple restrictions in place, the formless killing intent lost its ability to track Chen Ying precisely. It could only faintly sense his presence. It's all up to him now. Li Fan stopped thinking about it, left the residential area on 10,000 Immortal Island, and returned to the Tianquan mirror. If I didn't know that the entire Kanyan Sea would disappear soon, I would definitely buy a cave dwelling myself. Feeling the relatively cramped space in the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan couldn't help but have this thought. Chapter 450. It wasn't purely for enjoyment but rather to better align with the identity of the Heavenly Mechanism sect cultivator as an investment master. After all, with your ability to double the capital every 2 years, it wouldn't make much sense to be crammed into the Tianquan mirror like an ordinary cultivator. Though it could be explained by claiming a reclusive nature. However, considering the possible publicity effect of purchasing a cave on the 10,000 Immortal Island shortly after joining the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, Li Fan really had the idea of purchasing a cave dwelling. After searching for a while, he had no choice but to give up. The reason was simply a contribution points alone weren't enough. Not only was there a requirement for a certain level of authority requirement within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, but one also needed to obtain a residence permit issued by the administration hall of the island to be eligible to purchase a cave dwelling there. This residence permit is generally only granted to cultivators who have made special contributions to the local branch of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. However, it is said that there are additional channels through which one can privately purchase such a permit, though it's unclear whether this is true. It's better to stay in the Tianquan mirror for now. Li Fan dismissed the idea. He took out the Insight Enlighten pill that Chen Ying had just given him, swallowed it in one go, and carefully felt the changes occurring within himself. Its effect was somewhat similar to the Enlightenment pill. However, the Enlightenment pill is more comprehensive, aiding in the comprehension of cultivation techniques, deduction of secret arts, or breakthroughs in cultivation levels. This Insight Enlighten pill, on the other hand, only shows its effects when Li Fan wants to make a breakthrough in his cultivation. It's like a low-end, specialized version of the Enlightenment pill. Enlightenment pills are hard to come by within the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, so this Insight Enlighten pill isn't bad either. To avoid wasting the pill's effect, Li Fan seized the time it lasted and began cultivating. It was unclear how much time had passed before Li Fan was abruptly awakened by an inexplicable sensation in his heart. It turned out that the restrictions on entering the fallen immortal realm had lifted, and he could go there again. It seems like this retreat was more immersive than usual. I only felt like I closed my eyes for a moment, but so much time has passed. There is indeed some value here. Such talent. I hope he can survive this calamity. With this thought, Li Fan began setting up a ritual in the surroundings. Blessings to the heavenly Venerable Xuanwang, he murmured. The next moment, the world spun around him, and Li Fan found himself descending back into the fallen immortal realm. As expected, his entire body was enveloped in a mysterious liquid, surrounded by darkness. He had once again become the heavenly fate mystical bird, still inside its eggshell. Fatigue and weakness pervaded him. Li Fan tried his best to absorb the surrounding liquid, striving to stay awake. While doing so, he pondered his options. From the experience of Yi Feipeng in my previous life, the creation furnace technique is effective even for creatures like demonic beasts. Although my body is currently too fragile, and forcibly invoking the hidden power might cause a backlash I can't handle. But with Shu Ke watching over me, it should be fine. I might as well give it a try. If it doesn't work out, I can always start over. In an instant, Li Fan made up his mind. Focusing his thoughts, it was as if he wielded a massive hammer, striking hard at the force within him. What's happening? A searing power suddenly erupted from within, seemingly burning everything. Li Fan's consciousness was about to dissolve when, in a daze, he seemed to hear Shu Kei's faint exclamation. He then fell into silence. After an unknown amount of time, Li Fan gradually regained consciousness. Instinctively checking his condition, he found that he was several times stronger than before he had passed out. The hidden power he had initially activated surged from every part of his body, transforming the mystical bird. The liquid in the dark space around him also seemed to contain another form of energy. Tiny specks of red light, resembling flames, began to appear. Not bad, Shu Kei. Li Fan greedily swallowed a few gulps and immediately felt more energized. This Isa. The taste of the red specks was strikingly similar to a certain fruit that Shu Kei had fed the heavenly fate mystical bird in a previous life. A great tonic, Shu Kei, you really are resourceful. No wonder you're favored by fate. Li Fan was finally at ease. After fully digesting the energy he had consumed and feeling that his body was in peak condition, Li Fan once again focused his thoughts and unleashed the hidden power within. What's happening again? Just before passing out, Li Fan vaguely heard Shu Kei's miserable cry. True to his word, Shu Kei exerted himself again and managed to save the dying heavenly fate mystical bird. In this way, Li Fan fearlessly and without hesitation continued to practice the creation furnace technique. Whenever he could not endure it anymore, Shu Kei's seemingly otherworldly luck would lead him to find a solution. After repeating this process 7 times, the surrounding liquid was entirely absorbed, and Li Fan felt it was time. Letting out a loud cry, Li Fan clawed at the eggshell. Fine cracks spread out, and then light appeared. Li Fan broke through the shell. After devouring the broken eggshell, Li Fan looked at the stunned Shu Kei beside him, fluttered his wings, and made a home in his hair. Oh no, I haven't completed the spirit beast arts bonding, and it's already hatched. Did I raise it to be useless? Shu Kei lamented, muttering to himself. Li Fan unceremoniously gave him a claw, conveying the message that he was hungry. Shu Kei yelped in surprise and had no choice but to take Li Fan into the forest to search for food. As Li Fan practiced the creation furnace technique, he also sensed the connection between himself and Shu Kei. A thread of cold energy subtly flowed through his body, beyond his control, and seemed to resonate with Shu Kei beneath him. Had it not been for Li Fan's practice of the creation furnace technique and the initial control over his body it provided, he might never have noticed it. It was this thread of cold energy that made Li Fan feel a slight sense of closeness to Shu Kei. However, since Li Fan had independently broken out of his shell in this life, the kind of unbreakable bond had not yet formed. So this is the beast taming art? Li Fan mused. He then gave Shu Kei another hard claw, causing him to cry out in pain. Li Fan resumed his cultivation of the heaven's mandate as mine, divine power. As he absorbed the luck that overflowed from Shu Kei, Li Fan felt invigorated. Under the dual enhancement of the creation furnace technique, and the heaven's mandate is mine, although he was just born, Li Fan's strength rapidly increased. Moreover, perhaps due to the reversed cultivation path in his previous life, which had strengthened his soul and will, Li Fan was now less influenced by the emotions and nature of the mystical bird. At least, he no longer experienced uncontrollable behavior. More than a month later, while Shu Kei was not paying attention, Li Fan tested his abilities on some wild demonic beasts in the mountains. Ordinary demonic beasts in the chi condensation stage were no longer his match. One day, as Shu Kei was foraging with Li Fan as usual, they were suddenly stopped by an uninvited guest. It was none other than Song Yang, who had been eyeing the heavenly fate mystical bird. Sensing the gaze of the black two-headed snake coiled around Song Yang's neck, Li Fan sneered. A faint killing intent solidified and rushed toward it. The black two-headed snake immediately trembled and curled into a ball. Chapter 451. Song Yang immediately noticed the abnormality in his companion spirit beast and was instantly horrified. He hadn't expected that the heavenly fate mystical bird, which had just been born, could suppress the two-headed black snake merely through its aura. Watching the bird nestled in Shu Kei's thick hair, Song Yang's eyes gleamed with greed. However, he knew better than to rely on the black two-headed snake. It seemed he would need to find another way. With a cold snort, Song Yang calmed his spirit beast and turned away. Having turned a crisis into nothing, Li Fan yawned and curled back into his nest. Meanwhile, Shu Kei scratched his head, looking puzzled and confused. Time continued to flow, and the power of the bird that Li Fan had transformed into kept growing. Soon, it reached its first point of transformation. Its pitch-black feathers had grown all over its body, and perhaps due to absorbing Shukei's fortune since childhood, a strand of purple gold was mixed in. Because of the training in the creation furnace cultivation technique, which allowed for control over its body, it didn't grow in size, remaining small enough to sleep in Shukei's hair. Relying on its physical body alone, it could already go toe-to-toe with late-stage Foundation establishment demon beasts. It had long unlocked a psychic connection with Shukei, but Li Fan had always ignored him. As a result, Shukei, naive as he was, never noticed. On the contrary, Li Fan took the opportunity to constantly probe Shukei's mind, trying to extract the foundational technique of the beast-taming sect, the beast-taming art. Unfortunately, the kid's thoughts were too erratic, like a wild horse, impossible to pin down. Moreover, the beast-taming art seemed to have some sort of restriction preventing spirit beasts from prying, so Li Fan had never succeeded. One day, as Li Fan lay in Shukei's hair sunbathing and dozing off, he suddenly felt a sense of foreboding. He stood up, his expression solemn. Judging by the time, today should be the day Mr. Bai appears. To avoid drawing attention, Li Fan quickly shrank back and hid inside, secretly observing. Half a day later, with a resounding dragon's roar echoing through the heavens and earth, Mr. Bai made his official entrance. Just as in his past life, the entire beast-taming sect found no one who could stand against Mr. Bai. Sky-soaring azure dragons, twin-winged white tigers, two-horned kilins. Many exotic beasts were slain, their organs taken by Mr. Bai as gifts for the children. Painful wails echoed throughout the beast-taming sect. The disciples of the beast-taming sect stood in stunned silence, trembling with fear. At that moment, Li Fan moved. Suppressing his inner terror, he transformed into a streak of black light and shot toward the sky through the rain of blood from the demon beasts. Indeed, Li Fan's target was Mr. Bai. He had long harbored a suspicion in his heart. Could this Mr. Bai of the fallen immortal realm be the heavenly doctor, from many years later in the real world? There were just too many similarities between the two. Both were experts in medicine, both had unfathomable strength, and both had methods that were hard to distinguish as either righteous or evil. During the retrieve the longevity fruit from Ningyuana incident, Li Fan had never managed to see Mr. Bai's true face. And now, in this change in the beast-taming sect, due to some unknown influence, Li Fan, looking up from below, still couldn't see his appearance clearly. Thus, Li Fan made this attempt. He wanted to get close to Mr. Bai and find out the truth. To be honest, with his current cultivation level, barely at the Foundation establishment stage, it was sheer madness to think he could achieve this without external help. However, Li Fan had some confidence. This confidence came from Shukei. Shukei was a person favored by destiny, and as his companion spirit beast, Li Fan was also blessed with fortune. More importantly, Shukei was one of the children Mr. Bai had referred to. With this connection, Li Fan believed that if Mr. Bai's current demeanor was not a Fa Section aid, then he wouldn't be in any real danger. Besides, this was within the fallen immortal realm. Even if he perished, it would only be his consciousness that would suffer damage. It was worth the risk. As the beast-taming sect crumbled, the black light that Li Fan had transformed into was strikingly conspicuous. Like a reverse-flying meteor, it was unstoppable and filled with determination. Who was that? How dare it? These questions surged through the minds of all the beast-taming sect members. Even the powerful exotic beasts, whose strength rivaled soul transformation cultivators, were defeated by the invaders. Where did this black bird, seemingly only at the Foundation establishment level, find the courage? Amidst the shock and confusion, Li Fan ascended rapidly, closing in on the figure in the sky. Mr. Bai glanced over. In an instant, Li Fan felt the space around him, and even his thoughts, freeze. He was plunged into absolute stillness. He didn't know how much time had passed, or if it was just a moment later. The confinement around him suddenly vanished, and Li Fan regained the ability to move. So this is the power of a top-notch expert. Li Fan was horrified. He finally understood why those who had slain Crimson Flame and successfully achieved Dao integration in the past looked foolish and as if they were waiting to die when facing ink death. It wasn't that they didn't want to resist or flee. They simply couldn't. The only reason Li Fan was able to break free from Mr. Bai's grip was not due to his own power. It was because of a faint shout from below a Shukei's voice. Little Black. Li Fan believed that everything within the beast-taming sect couldn't escape Mr. Bai's notice. With Shukei's shout, Mr. Bai naturally noticed the connection between the bird Li Fan had possessed and Shu Ke. So, Mr. Bai didn't harm Li Fan and even allowed the daring bird to approach him. At such close range, Li Fan finally saw Mr. Bai's appearance clearly. Even with the experience of 100 lifetimes, Li Fan couldn't help but be stunned. He finally understood why, back in Ningyuan City, people had said that Mr. Bai was extraordinarily good-looking. He exuded a slightly frail aura, but his face seemed flawless, breathtakingly beautiful. It was as if all the love of the heavens and earth had been bestowed upon him. Li Fan's mind was filled with thoughts like, how could someone be this good-looking? And, it's a pity he's not a woman. Mr. Bai looked at the bird, standing dumbfounded in the air, and smiled slightly. At that moment, Li Fan felt as if the sky, which had been shrouded in dark clouds, suddenly cleared up. Mr. Bai glanced at Li Fan and shook his head slightly. You silly child, why are you practicing recklessly? With a gentle wave of his finger, Li Fan felt a torrent of information flood into his mind. This is... Li Fan was stunned. Then, his heart began to race uncontrollably. It was all the secrets of life and the various paths to evolution and transcendence. It was the perfected version of his cultivation technique, the creation furnace technique. Chapter 452. Cloud and Water Illusion Dream Art, Mystic True Spirit Transformation, Stealing the Sky and Changing the Sun Technique. Li Fan had once practiced these techniques, which could be considered peerless and extraordinary. But compared to the creation furnace technique he just obtained in his mind, all of them paled in comparison and were hardly worth mentioning. Li Fan was deeply immersed in the beautiful words, as if he could glimpse the true mysteries of the universe through this technique. He even had a premonition that in this era where there are no restrictions on cultivation, this single technique could allow even someone without any cultivation potential to refine, evolve, and transcend themselves step by step, eventually becoming extraordinary and ascending to immortality. What is called the supreme profound skill? What is the ultimate orthodox method? This is it. It truly deserves the term, creation. Li Fan eagerly read and comprehended the creation furnace technique, unable to suppress his joy. To hear the Tao in the morning, and die in the evening without regret. His mind was completely immersed, not even realizing when he returned to Shu Ke's side. He didn't know how long it had been when he finally came to his senses, and Mr. Bai had already disappeared without a trace. The beast-taming sect had become chaotic, just like in his previous life. The disciples of the beast-taming sect, who witnessed their elders being slaughtered wantonly, were filled with despair. At this moment, Shu Ke was cautiously leading Li Fan, trying to avoid the crazed actions of his senior brothers, attempting to follow the guidance of the jade talisman given by Luya to find Mr. Bai. Peering into Shu Ke's thoughts, Li Fan was surprised to find that Shu Ke's memory completely lacked the scene of him transforming into a mystical bird, flying to Mr. Bai's side, and receiving his guidance. After a moment of thought, Li Fan immediately understood. A person without guilt may incur guilt by possessing a treasure. The creation furnace technique, passed down by Mr. Bai, could be considered the ultimate miraculous method. If it were to fall into the hands of a mere foundation establishment-level demon beast, it would undoubtedly arouse the covetousness of others. No matter how mystical the technique, it would be useless if he couldn't practice it. Mr. Bai must have considered this, so he erased the memories of everyone present. In this way, Li Fan wouldn't face danger because of this technique and would have enough time to practice it slowly. Mr. Bai was very thoughtful. Li Fan couldn't help but sigh. After seeing Mr. Bai in person, Li Fan was now certain that he was definitely not Heavenly Doctor. Not only did they not resemble each other in appearance, but their temperaments were also vastly different. Mr. Bai's beauty was unforgettable after just one glance. Most importantly, the kindness and warmth he unconsciously exuded were impossible to fake. It was completely different from the eerie and unpredictable nature of the Heavenly Doctor. Li Fan couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. To deal with the myriad demon beasts as easily as slaughtering chickens and dogs, with just one glance, he could see through my cultivation method and instantly provide the ultimate solution, effortlessly altering the consciousness of all the living beings present. Such power could be said to rival creation itself. Mr. Bai's strength, combined with his actions, Li Fan couldn't help but think of the words longevity Heavenly Sovereign. In the understanding of the children in Ningyuan City, Mr. Bai is just immortal. Mr. Bai himself also admitted this. In a short time, a mortal into a god, then from a god to a mortal. Looking at it this way, the claims of the orphans in Ningyuan City that Mr. Bai is the kindest person in the world, the best healer, the most beautiful person, the gentlest speaker, the smartest person, and so on, may not be exaggerated at all. Li Fan's heart couldn't help but waver. But a question soon followed. Where is Mr. Bai now, thousands of years later? Is he one of the other two of the Five Elders Association besides unified mind-heart, worry-free, and true reality? Li Fan thought it was unlikely. The way the Five Elders Association conducts itself is completely at odds with Mr. Bai. Is he in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance? The Eastern Extremity Heavenly Sovereign, who is said to have created the pure body-spirit pool formation and helped mortals expel miasma from their bodies, does bear some resemblance to Mr. Bai. However, this Eastern Extremity Heavenly Sovereign has only appeared in rumors. Even Li Fan only came across a mention of him while reading ancient texts. Most 10,000 Immortals Alliance cultivators probably aren't even aware of his existence. If Mr. Bai were still alive, he certainly wouldn't be so unknown. Or, like the Tao Transmission Heavenly Sovereign in the previous life, did Mr. Bai successfully break free from the constraints of the Xuanwang world and leave this realm? Or, has Mr. Bai already perished? Just thinking about it, Li Fan shook his head and dismissed this idea. He found it hard to believe that someone as astonishingly talented as Mr. Bai would fall so easily. Li Fan stayed hidden in Shu Kei's hair, his thoughts churning, while naturally operating the creation furnace technique. Unlike the method Li Fan had previously devised himself, which involved brute force bombardment of his internal reserves and then seizing the overflow of reserve power for cultivation, the creation furnace technique, refined by Mr. Bai, used the heavenly and human induction technique to resonate with the universe's great furnace and the human body's internal furnace. Under the unity of heaven and man, one could freely manipulate the reserve power for transformation and cultivation. It also promoted the evolution of the body's internal furnace towards the universe's great furnace, truly a wondrous and profound method. With each moment of cultivation, Li Fan felt the mystical bird he was possessing undergoing transformation. What jolted him from this indescribably marvelous cultivation process, of course, was none other than that loathsome beast-taming sect disciple, Song Yang. He still harbored evil intentions towards Li Fan, the heavenly fate mystical bird. After failing in his previous attempt, this time he returned with even greater force, having spent a fortune to borrow a golden core stage Immortal tiger for assistance, swearing to capture Li Fan. The Immortal tiger roared and strutted arrogantly, while Li Fan, who had been disturbed, was extremely displeased. The furnace in his body roared, and the reserve power surged out. Li Fan flew into the sky, his body expanding, and in an instant, he transformed from a small bird the size of a palm into a fierce beast with a wingspan of 3 zhong, 2 or 3 times larger than the Immortal tiger. Like catching a chick, Li Fan grabbed the Immortal tiger with one claw. Before it could struggle, a dark profound light emitted from Li Fan's mouth, giving birth to a suction force, and Li Fan swallowed the Immortal tiger in one gulp. Shu Kei was instantly dumbfounded. As for Song Yang, he was terrified out of his wits, fleeing in panic. There was still a faint stench lingering in the air. Li Fan snorted coldly, disdainful of pursuing. He withdrew his reserve power, returning to his original size, and landed back on Shu Kei's head. The forced transformation seemed to have drained some of his strength, but his body, like a furnace, refined the Immortal tiger he had swallowed into pure energy. Warm currents coursed through his entire body, and Li Fan suddenly felt a wave of fatigue. He then uncontrollably fell into a deep sleep. Leaving Shu Kei with a face full of disbelief, he stretched out his hands, touched Li Fan, and stood there like a wooden statue. Chapter 453. In the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan sat in a daze, his expression vacant. Even though he had long known that the items and knowledge obtained in the fallen immortal realm could only be brought back if one resolved their desires, it was still hard to accept. This time, when he returned to the real world and could not recall a single word of the creation furnace technique taught by Mr. Bai, Li Fan found it difficult to maintain his composure. Having experienced the wonders of such supreme Taoist methods firsthand, Li Fan found his own crude techniques even more unacceptable. The gap was too vast, like the difference between the stars in the sky and the plants on the ground. The stark contrast left Li Fan feeling a bit unbalanced. Especially since the treasure he once possessed vanished like smoke in an instant, never to be seen again. Even someone as mentally resilient as Li Fan couldn't help but feel a sense of loss. Mr. Bai, the creation furnace technique. If I can try endlessly, surely one day I can bring this true skill back. After a long while, Li Fan took a deep breath and slowly suppressed the negative emotions in his heart. Based on his experience in Retrieve the Ningyuana's longevity fruit, to bring an item out, one must fulfill the lingering wish of the item's owner. What could Mr. Bai's lingering wish be? For now, Mr. Bai was still too mysterious for Li Fan. He could only keep trying slowly in the future. After a brief moment of sensing, Li Fan realized that the next time he could enter the fallen immortal realm would be in half a year. Unfortunately, this time limit was a bit longer than usual, so Li Fan sighed and kept it in mind. At this time, Li Fan checked his communication talisman and discovered a message from Chen Ying. Chen Ying mentioned that he had already headed to the destination and was fully prepared. If he managed to survive this ordeal, he promised to repay Li Fan generously. Li Fan chuckled and thought that if this were true, he could use it as a typical case to widely promote. But the major battle in Tianling Prefecture is not set to occur until 16 years later. The focus before that should be on the Lingwu Grass incident. If it weren't for the clear declaration from the Tianshuan Mirror, the Five Elders Association wouldn't make a big fuss over an unknown cave. And without Zhao Shuyuan's instigation, the Lingwu Grass incident wouldn't have spread as far as it did in the previous life. After careful consideration, Li Fan decided to visit Zhao Shuyuan first. Without concealing his identity, Li Fan, in the appearance of a disciple of the Heavenly Mechanism sect, arrived outside Qinli Hall. Inside, it was as quiet as ever. Zhao Shuyuan was lazily lying on a long bench, eyes half closed, seemingly dozing off. Hearing footsteps, he suddenly stood up and changed his expression. "Oh, a guest is here." Zhao Shuyuan looked at Li Fan, first stunned, then greeted him warmly without showing any emotion. Li Fan didn't mention what he was there to buy, but instead, he narrowed his eyes and stared at Zhao Shuyuan. The two stared at each other in silence for a while. After a moment, Li Fan was the first to cup his hands in greeting. "Your puppet technique, transforming into thousands forms, is indeed extraordinary. Even in ancient times, it would have been considered a rare divine ability." Surprised to have his secret technique revealed by someone he just met, Zhao Shuyuan was taken aback. But he covered it up well and immediately responded. "Peering into the mysteries of heaven and probing karma. The ancient heavenly mechanism sect truly lives up to its name. Impressive, truly impressive. I've long heard of you. I've long heard of you." The two exchanged a glance and laughed heartily. After some mutual compliments and formal introductions, Zhao Shuyuan tentatively asked, "You didn't just come here to tease me, did you?" "Why would I be so idle?" Li Fan waved his hand. "I am here for the sake of wealth." Zhao Shuyuan's interest was piqued. "Oh, what are you looking for?" "Formation talismans, magical artifacts, pilsa. We have it all, and in large quantities," he said casually. "Do I look like I'm lacking in those?" Li Fan asked with a smile. "Then what do you want?" Zhao Shuyuan's face became serious. "I didn't come to buy but to sell." Li Fan shook his head and said seriously. "As for whether the deal can be made, it depends on whether you recognize its value." "Sell, not everything can be accepted here." Zhao Shuyuan began, but stopped when he saw what was in Li Fan's hand. An eyeball, looking as if it were alive, glared at him fiercely. It exuded killing intent, making him instinctively want to defend himself. Fortunately, he noticed that the eyeball had no offensive power and managed to hold back. "What is this?" Zhao Shuyuan squinted his eyes and couldn't help but ask. Li Fan, with a hint of nostalgia in his voice, said, "This is a relic of my late senior brother. He has passed, and this item is now useless to me. It only brings sadness when I see it. So, I want to pass it on to someone else who is fated." Unfortunately, the Tianshuan mirror didn't recognize its value and offered a low price. "It's an insult to my senior brother. So I deduced the heavenly secrets and searched for someone qualified to take it. That's how I ended up here with you," Li Fan explained slowly. Li Fan wasn't lying. In the Tianji sect ruins in Beishi Cave Heaven, besides techniques and scriptures, Li Fan had two other gains. One of them was the eyeball in his hand. The Tianshuan mirror identified it as the illusion-breaking stone eye, a kind of unique existence that gathers the rules of heaven and earth. It is said that if a cultivator absorbs and refines it, they will gain the ability to see through illusions and foresee the future. In theory, such a treasure should be incredibly valuable. But unfortunately, this illusion-breaking stone eye had already been refined once by a cultivator. The pure laws of heaven and earth had been tainted by the cultivator's aura and karma. Moreover, Thousands of years had passed, the world had undergone great changes, and the laws of heaven had significantly altered from ancient times. Due to these two factors, the illusion-breaking stone eye's divination ability was greatly diminished. If it worked once out of 10 times, one could count themselves lucky. Therefore, the Tianquan mirror offered a recovery price of only 60,000 contribution points. Although this item was of little use to Li Fan, who could already foresee the future, he wasn't lacking those 60,000 points, so he kept it with him. Now, it was the perfect time to use it to establish a connection with Zhao Shuyuan. So, friend Zhao, do you recognize this item? Li Fan deliberately asked. Zhao Shuyuan was stunned for a moment, then sneered, how could I not know? It's just the eye of truth. He pondered for a moment and said, to be honest, the low price given by the Tianquan mirror has its reasons. Although this item is rare, if you want to sell it at a good price, you'll need to find the right buyer. Li Fan responded, I understand that, of course. That's why I came to you. Li Fan casually tossed the illusion-breaking stone eye to Zhao Shuyuan and said, I trust you can find it a suitable new owner. Please do me this favor. Half of the proceeds will go to you. How about it? Zhao Shuyuan's eyes lit up. I'll take this deal. Chapter 454. Seeing that Zhao Shuyuan agreed so readily, Li Fan nodded. Then, I'll leave this matter to you, Taoist Zhao. I look forward to your good news. After saying that, he threw a communication talisman to Zhao Shuyuan and left without mentioning anything about leaving. A receipt. This person really trusts me, Zhao Shuyuan muttered to himself as he tossed the illusion-breaking stone eye in his hand. In the next moment, the stone eye vanished into thin air, its destination unknown. The puppet on 10,000 Immortal Island returned to its previous lazy state. Zhao Shuyuan never imagined that it wasn't trust Li Fan had in him, but rather that the illusion-breaking stone eye was merely a pretext for Li Fan to establish a connection with him. Even if Zhao Shuyuan could not sell it or decided to keep it for himself, it wouldn't matter to Li Fan. What Li Fan truly cared about was the big business that was coming next. Back in the Tianquan mirror, Li Fan recalled the other object he had discovered in the heavenly mechanism sect ruins. It was an entire layer of a pagoda that he had cut out and brought back. His intuition at the time had been correct. According to the Tianquan mirror's assessment, the entire layer of the stone pagoda was actually a magical artifact called the Heaven and Earth Divination Dice. When mortals roll dice, they get numbers like 5 or 6. But when cultivators roll the dice, they get the number of the celestial mystery. The ancient cultivators of the heavenly mechanism sect used these heaven and earth divination dice, relying on sufficient information and using chi sensing as a driving force, to deduce countless possibilities of the future. The reason why Li Fan saw only an empty void was that the heaven and earth divination dice were frozen in the scene where the deduction was completed. Void. I wonder what the heavenly mechanism sect cultivators were deducing back then to arrive at such a result. Li Fan stretched out his hand, and a crystal-clear icosahedral dice appeared in his palm. If you looked closely, it seemed that each side flickered with a different image. Although Li Fan had tried several times before to use these heaven and earth divination dice, to deduce the future, to see if it aligned with his previous experiences, he only obtained fragmented and meaningless images, probably due to improper usage. These images were of no practical use. Even so, Li Fan did not sell it. He had a gut feeling that keeping it might be of great use in the future. After playing with it for a while, Li Fan put away the dice and shifted his focus to his clone, Zhou Qingong. These days, he had been staying on Tian Island, only occasionally using a communication talisman to contact necessary people. He wasn't just idly daydreaming but was researching how to overcome the side effects of the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique. This secret technique was likely inspired by the ancient mythical beast, the Guiyuan toad. Although it truly had the ability to devour the world, the mind was easily lost, and the end result was either death from overconsumption or being discovered and beaten to death. However, Li Fan possessed the power to maintain absolute rationality, the blue flame, from the visualization of the illusory spirit. He did not seek to stay calm during the entire devouring process, only to stop at critical moments. With the dual boost from the enlightenment pill, and the spiritual awakening state, Li Fan finally managed to achieve this after much effort. However, to increase his cultivation using the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, he still needed to solve the problem of the earth's veins solidifying and becoming unabsorbable. Li Fan had already planned for this. Concealing his presence, he teleported to the western part of Lingmu Island in the Kongyun Sea and continued flying westward. After about 500 miles, Li Fan quietly dove into the sea. He searched the seabed for a while and indeed found the remnants of a sunken island. In his previous life, not long from now, this island would re-emerge from the sea due to a mysterious change in the Earth's veins. The reactivation of the Islanda's protective formation would also attract the attention of the formation masters in the Kongyun Sea's formation hall. However, before all that happened, this place looked no different from the other ruins scattered across the seabed. Li Fan entered the ruins and patiently waited. 7 days later, the seabed began to tremble slightly. Ida's here. Li Fan thought to himself, and with a swift kick, he sunk into the ground. At the same time, he activated the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, and began to sense his surroundings. From an unknown, far-off place, a continuous surge of power slowly activated the dried-up earth vein node here. If left unchecked, this reactivated node would push the sunken island back to the surface. But with Li Fan here, that would not happen. Under his feet, it was as if a giant vortex had formed. The surging power of the Earth's veins, before taking shape, was entirely absorbed into Li Fan's body, transforming into pure spiritual energy. Simultaneously, the technique practiced by his clone started to operate rapidly. It wasn't the technique originally practiced by the spy Zhou Qingong. Instead, it was the Heavenly Fate Xuanji technique. A nascent soul technique from the Heavenly Mechanism sect. This ancient technique was known for being extremely slow to cultivate. But now, with the unrestricted acceleration provided by the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, it was progressing at a frightening speed. The power of the Earth's veins flowed endlessly, and Li Fan's clone absorbed it without restraint. What should have been a phenomenon that shook the entire surrounding sea was quietly neutralized. In just an instant, the clone's cultivation reached the peak of the early golden core stage. Due to the existence of heavenly calamity, no matter how fast the Heavenly Fate Xuanji technique operated, his cultivation could not advance any further. Li Fan frowned slightly but did not stop devouring. Even though the power of the Earth's veins he was devouring was being wasted, he did not mind at all. The spiritual energy transformed by the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique continued to accumulate in the Clonia's body, completely filling every part of it. As the Clonia's body was about to burst, Li Fan patted his chest, and his hand emitted a powerful suction force. He began to absorb and transform the excess spiritual energy within his body. In the ancient times before the heavenly calamity, such a situation would not have occurred, as the speed of obtaining spiritual energy would never outpace the growth of cultivation. But the existence of cultivation bottlenecks trapped Li Fan in this strange predicament. The energy from devouring was all used to accelerate the cultivation technique. Yet, no progress could be made. The technique operated at a terrifying speed, like a turbulent tide crashing against an indestructible dam again and again. Li Fan carefully observed and recorded everything happening within his body. Compared to the immense power of the Earth's veins, the strength of a small golden core cultivator was insignificant. But this force, which should have at least advanced a golden core cultivator to the nascent soul stage, was being continually consumed in the process of overcoming the heavenly calamity. However, it turned out that Li Fan's efforts were not in vain. After countless impacts, the bottleneck finally showed a slight loosening. Chapter 455. Li Fan's eyes flashed with a glimmer as he increased the intensity of his devouring. The earth vein energy, which had traveled millions of miles to reach him, completely flowed into Li Fan's body. Boom, boom, Li Fan seemed to faintly hear the sound of collisions and roaring explosions coming from within his body. In the midst of this internal struggle, it felt as if something was slowly shattering. A crisp cracking sound seemed to echo in his ears. Moments later, Li Fan's cultivation surged forward, with his aura constantly rising. In the blink of an eye, he advanced from just recently breaking through the mid-stage of the golden core to rapidly moving toward the late stage. At this moment, Li Fan suddenly sensed that the dim light at the bottom of the sea had completely disappeared. It wasn't just darkness in his vision, but a suffocating feeling of space being sealed. Without pausing his devouring technique, Li Fan simultaneously looked up. He saw a gigantic palm above his head, its origin unknown. It obscured everything and pressed down on him. Before this immense palm, Li Fan was as insignificant as an ant. Damn, seeing this powerful being appear out of nowhere, Li Fan cursed inwardly. However, his clone was currently operating the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, making him fearless, as if he had the courage of a bear or leopard. Faced with this terrifying giant palm, he was not afraid at all. On the contrary, he opened his mouth, wanting to devour the giant palm as well. And the result? Naturally, it was predictable. In the next moment, Li Fan lost contact with his clone. The only fortunate thing was that this mysterious being did not seem intent on pursuing the matter further. They didn't follow the trail to find Li Fan's true body. Otherwise, he would have been forced to reveal himself again. Li Fan carefully recalled the timing of the giant Handa's appearance. It seems that it was triggered because I forcefully broke through the heavenly calamity. Is it a countermeasure from the heavens, or? Frowning slightly, a blue light emitted from the Tao deviation stone crystal in Li Fan's mind. Just before his clone was crushed, using the heaven-devouring earth-eating technique, he managed to absorb a trace of energy from that giant hand. If the opponent had been a cultivator, Li Fan would not have been able to do this at all. As he repeatedly savored the taste of that energy, Li Fan began to ponder. It feels more like a pure force of rules. It seems somewhat similar to senior brother Zhang's grand aspiration Dharma body. Normally, he doesn't show up in public, but he will take action under certain circumstances. I had originally planned to use the heaven-devouring earth-eating method to elevate the clone's cultivation to the peak of the golden core stage first, to accumulate experience for breaking through to the nascent soul. Who would have thought that such a calamity could occur? Fortunately, it was just a clone. Li Fan sighed, having grown accustomed to the constant dangers of the Xuanwang realm. Quietly leaving 10,000 Immortal Island, he found a secluded spot and spent some time recreating the Zhou Qingong clone. The clone nodded slightly, bid farewell to the true body, and headed toward the site of the incident. He wanted to see what had become of the sea area after being struck by that heavenly palm. Soon, Li Fan returned to the scene. To his great surprise, the sea was calm, the sky clear. There was no sign of any calamity. It seemed as though everything that had happened earlier was just an illusion. Li Fan pondered for a moment before diving into the sea. When he saw the scene at the bottom, his pupils constricted. The ruins of the sunken island were gone. In their place was an ordinary seabed of mud and sand. It wasn't just destroyed, it was as if every trace of its existence had been completely erased. After a long, deep look, Zhou Qingong quietly returned to Tian Island and laid low. In the Tianshuan mirror, through the eyes of his clone, Li Fan observed the aftermath of the giant palm strike and fell into contemplation. Because I forcefully broke through the heavenly calamity, did I trigger some kind of taboo, resulting in an attempt to erase me? And it all happened so silently. If one could survive such a strike, what would happen? Would there be no more bottlenecks? Of course, it might also attract even more terrifying existence. These reckless thoughts lasted only a moment before Li Fan dismissed them. However, in my previous life, after some time, the heavenly calamity would mysteriously disappear on its own. I wonder what the reason behind that is. After being suppressed by the sudden appearance of the giant palm, Li Fan abandoned the idea of having his clone cultivate as well. He decided it was better to use the clone as a mere tool, to sacrifice itself in critical moments. Since his attempt to gain early insights into forming the nascent soul through his clone had failed, Li Fan had no choice but to take a step back and purchase related experiences from the Tianshuan mirror. Each person's insights varied greatly, yet all had their merits, with no clear distinctions of superiority. With his abundant resources, Li Fan bought everything and studied them carefully. Time passed slowly as Li Fan continued his cultivation and contemplation. Soon, it was time for his second investment meeting with He Zhenghao. Since the previous meeting had gone well, He Zhenghao had made some decent gains this time, raising a total of 550,000 contribution points. After confirming with Li Fan, He Zhenghao immediately transferred the contribution points over. He also added his own 100,000 contribution points. 1 year later, 1 million contribution points, Li Fan stated concisely. He Zhenghao was overjoyed, and a stream of flattery spilled from his lips. Li Fan couldn't be bothered to listen and directly cut off communication. He then began reviewing the list of contributors this time. What caught his attention was that a cultivator named Zhou Peng still held the largest share. Interesting, he has such confidence in me. Not afraid that I'll take the money and run. And how does a foundation establishment cultivator like him, just like He Zhenghao, have so many contribution points? Li Fan had heard of this person from He Zhenghao in his past life. He was a friend who often gathered with He Zhenghao to discuss investment strategies. It seemed he had a close relationship with a certain cultivator from Tianji Hall, making him well informed, often leading others to small profits. Thus, he held considerable influence within their small circle. In past lives, when He Zhenghao planned to speculate on Lingwu, spirit mist grass, this person had played a significant role. HMPH, whatever the scheme, I'm not afraid. Let's just watch and see. Li Fan looked at his balance of over 6 million contribution points and sneered. With so many contribution points, he could keep up the charade for a while longer. Besides, the Lingwu grass incident was approaching. These contribution points would multiply several times over. The only concern is that such a large transaction might attract the attention of those with ulterior motives. It's time to check on how junior brother Tianyang is recovering. With this in mind, Li Fan quietly entered the Dao formation. Tianyang sat quietly within the formation, absorbing energy to restore himself. He made no defensive moves against Li Fan's arrival. Li Fan checked on the progress. Almost there. A nascent soul-level strength should be safe within the Kongyan Sea. But outside the Kongyan Sea, it might not be enough. Crimson flames burning the sea. Li Fan glanced at Tianyang, a trace of hesitation flashing in his eyes. Chapter 456. Based on Li Fan's experiences from his previous lives, in the Crimson Flame Sea incineration incident, any cultivator who attempted to merge with the Crimson Flame ultimately met with death. Ink Death, who had inherited the Heaven's mandate to destroy the world, was simply too terrifying. A newly merged cultivator stood no chance against him. Junior brother Tianyang's actual combat power is likely even lower than Zhang Ziliang's in the previous life, so I won't let him go to his death. A puppet body is different from a mortal one. To improve combat strength, breaking through cultivation levels isn't the only way. Although costly, once the Cloud Sea is destroyed and I flee with the money, it'll definitely be enough for me. After some thought, Li Fan ultimately abandoned the plan to have Tianyang risk merging and instead focused on observing and protecting him. 15 days later, as the materials within the Return to Origin formation were completely exhausted, Tianyang also completed his final transformation. His puppet body was perfectly reinforced, and his cultivation level stabilized at the peak of the soul transformation stage. Junior brother Tianyang relies almost entirely on brute strength in battle. He still needs to find ways to refine it. With his cultivation complete and nothing to do, Tianyang stood silently and followed behind Li Fan. Li Fan took out the prepared clothing from his storage ring and dressed Tianyang. At the same time, he taught him the secret technique Sky Shrouding Palm. Junior brother, from now on, you'll study this secret technique. Once you master it, you can follow me in action. Li Fan instructed. Tianyang nodded solemnly and began studying earnestly. With only a trace of instinct left, the secret techniques of the heavenly mechanism sect were still somewhat complex for Tianyang. Fortunately, with Li Fan's careful guidance and Tianyang's focused mind, he would eventually master it through gradual study. TL. Lingwu Island and Lingwu Grass will now be translated as Spirit Mist Island and Spirit Mist Grass. As Tianyang diligently improved himself under Li Fan's guidance, Li Fan shifted his attention to Spirit Mist Island. He made a brief visit to Spirit Mist Island and silently locked down the island's defenses with a formless killing intent. Then, he returned to the Tianshuan mirror and began quietly acquiring Spirit Mist Grass while patiently waiting. Soon, the day arrived when the dragon whale beast was supposed to attack Spirit Mist Island, as it had in the previous life. However, for some unknown reason, the dragon whale had yet to appear by sunset. A sense of unease gripped Li Fan. As he feared, 3 more days passed, and Spirit Mist Island remained unscathed. Li Fan finally realized that the variables brought by his arrival nearly a year earlier in this world were inevitable. Instead of acting rashly, Li Fan first carefully investigated the whereabouts of the missing dragon whale beast. A creature with strength comparable to a Foundation establishment cultivator, one that had vaguely developed its own intelligence and could grow stronger by continuously devouring, shouldn't have just vanished without a trace. After searching for half a day with no results, Li Fan resorted to posting an anonymous bounty task, which finally yielded the answer. It turned out that the dragon whale beast had been killed not long ago by a golden core weapon refiner named Yu Zazan. All the valuable materials from the beast's body had been taken by him. Yu Zazan even sent a message, offering to sell any parts Li Fan might need at a low price. Feigning interest, Li Fan purchased several pieces of whale bone. After the transaction, Li Fan engaged in some casual conversation with Yu Zazen, trying to uncover the reason for this deviation from previous lifetimes. Yu Zazen, not suspecting anything, revealed that he had been temporarily inspired to search for materials in the Kongyan Sea at the request of his friend, Mu Rong, who wanted to forge a high-quality defensive artifact. As for why Mu Rong, who was perfectly fine, suddenly wanted a defensive artifact, Yu Zazen hadn't asked. Mu Ronga, Li Fan ended the communication, his expression shifting. This name was not unfamiliar to him. He even had some interactions with Mu Rong. This person was Chen Ying's assistant. In the previous life, before Chen Ying went to the Five Elements Cave Heaven, he had left Li Fan with Mu Rong's contact information. He told Li Fan that if he had any problems, he could directly seek out Mu Rong. Could it be that after seeing Chen Ying purchase so many life-saving treasures, he too developed a sense of crisis? Is that why he did this? Or perhaps Chen Ying said something to Hema? Li Fan felt a wave of helplessness. In any case, with the dragon whale not attacking Spirit Mist Island, Li Fan realized that he would have to personally intervene to set history back on its intended course. The risk is not small, and I need to do it without leaving any traces. Li Fan didn't act hastily but instead began to carefully plan in his mind. Should I disguise myself as a beast to act? Or should I borrow the power of the Five Elders Association? The chances of exposure are high in both scenarios. Perhaps I don't necessarily have to insist on the spirit mist grass. As long as I meet the conditions of stable demand and plants that only grow in certain special regions, it should suffice. Let's see if there's anything similar. Li Fan had a sudden thought and began searching through the Tianquan mirror. There were indeed many targets that met the criteria, but after adding further restrictions, specifically looking for those with unusual recent price fluctuations, only a few remained. Li Fan carefully examined each one, finally setting his sights on a spiritual plant known as Samantabhadra True Leaf. This herb had a relatively long growth cycle and wasn't commonly used. Its primary use was in the creation of a talisman known as Wise Discernment. In the era before the Tianquan spirit locking formation was invented, the Five Elders Association spies were pervasive. Most of them, like Zhou Qingang, mastered secret art of shape-shifting techniques that could even deceive the White Jade Inquiry platform. When the Wise Discernment Talisman was first invented hundreds of years ago, it played a significant role in rooting out many Five Elders Association spies. Because of this, it became an unwritten rule that entry into certain classified areas of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance required verification by the Wise Discernment Talisman. Although the Five Elders Association later learned from their mistakes and improved the concealment techniques of their spies, rendering the Wise Discernment Talisman largely ineffective, its use had become a habit. The Five Elders Association, naturally, couldn't openly announce that the Wise Discernment Talisman was no longer effective. And no one in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance had made a decision to stop using the Wise Discernment Talisman. Moreover, an interest chain had formed behind the production and manufacturing of the Wise Discernment Talisman. Due to these various factors, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance continued to require a significant amount of Samantabhadra True Leaf each year. But for some unknown reason, the once stable price of Samantabhadra True Leaf had recently begun to decline abnormally. Li Fan frowned slightly. He recalled that in his previous life, as the price of spirit mist grass skyrocketed, it also drove up the prices of other spiritual plants and herbs in the market. Samantabhadra True Leaf, however, was an exception. Chapter 457. The price of the Samantabhadra True Leaf has always been quite stable. There was even a rare occurrence where its price fell despite market trends. Even when the spirit mist grass caused a market crash in most spiritual herbs after the announcement by the Tianquan mirror, its price remained steady, showing no significant fluctuations. A Samantabhadra True Leaf A. As Li Fan searched through his memories, the Tao deviation stone in his mind emitted a faint blue glow. Moments later, Li Fan showed a trace of interest. According to his recollection, after the spirit mist grass incident, as abundant byproducts from the Five Elements Cave Heaven began to flood the market, the prices of most spiritual herbs and plants drastically dropped. However, the Samantabhadra True Leaf was an exception. In the following decades, the price of Samantabhadra True Leaf steadily increased. It was just too obscure to attract much attention from cultivators. So, when Li Fan made a fortune from the speculation surrounding the spirit mist grass and then devoted most of his energy to constructing the Tianquan spirit locking formation, he naturally overlooked it. Now, seeing that the spirit mist grass incident was unlikely to occur, Li Fan needed a substitute, and the unusual nature of the Samantabhadra true leaf caught his attention. In my previous life, I remember that after the Tianquan spirit locking formation became widespread, the wise discernment talisman was gradually phased out. However, its price remained high, indicating that it must have had some unknown uses. All these anomalies suggest that someone is manipulating the market behind the scenes. Li Fan carefully considered the feasibility of his plans to either attack Lingwu Island to artificially inflate the price of spirit mist grass or use the Samantabhadra true leaf as a substitute. Whichever method I choose, the end result will surely cause significant upheaval. The Tianji Hall will undoubtedly investigate. Judging from how things were handled in my past life, manipulating the market by buying low and selling high within the allowed rules was acceptable. But if someone intentionally disrupts the market or the economy, it could be deemed a threat to the stability of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. Even with my sky-shrouding palm secret art, I might not escape scrutiny. After careful consideration, Li Fan made a decision. However, I still need to see if the Samantabhadra true leaf is viable. He immediately took action. Li Fan sold off all his previously acquired spirit mist grass at any cost and began purchasing Samantabhadra true leaf. Instead, in the Tianquan mirror, the price of Samantabhadra true leaf was currently stable at around 280 contribution points per leaf. Li Fan made a massive purchase worth 1,000,000 contribution points, sweeping up all available stock. Soon, the market's inventory visibly dwindled. Simultaneously, its price began to rise gradually. It recovered from the recent dip and returned to a normal level, around 300 contribution points. Li Fan, remaining calm, continued to increase his buying pressure. Another 1,000,000 contribution points were invested. 301, 302. The price of Samantabhadra true leaf was about to break through 305. At this moment, its price suddenly plummeted, dropping from over 300 back to 292 contribution points in an instant. This indicates that someone has released a large quantity of Samantabhadra true leaf into the market. The Tianquan mirror detected an oversupply, leading to a rapid price drop. Interesting. A gleam flashed in Li Fan's eyes as he paused his actions to carefully consider the situation. Holding a large amount of Samantabhadra true leaf and intentionally manipulating the price down a y. And in the last life, during the spirit mist grass frenzy, they were able to maintain such tight control over the price of Samantabhadra true leaf even amidst a general rise in spiritual herb prices. Is almost certain that they have established some kind of monopoly. Confident of victory, are they It wasn't long before Li Fan connected this to a strategy he had used in his previous life, leading him to a possible conclusion. Suddenly, Li Fan stood up, exited the Tianquan mirror, and headed straight for the Qinli Hall. From outside, he could hear Zhao Shuyuan's disgruntled voice. Didn't you say you wanted this flying star disc? I went through so much trouble to dig it out, and now you don't want it. Can people still do business with any integrity? Li Fan interrupted with a smile. If nobody wants it. Take it. Zhao Shuyuan, who didn't know who he was talking to, immediately beamed upon hearing this. He quickly said, deal. 1,500 contribution points, fixed price. No going back on your word. He handed over a rusty copper disc. Li Fan took a glance but didn't find anything special about it. However, trusting his past experience, he paid the price and stored it carefully in his storage ring. Fellow Taoist Zhao, forget about these small transactions. They got a big deal for you this time. Li Fan said seriously. Zhao Shuyuan, recognizing Li Fan, thought he was here to inquire about the sale of the illusion-breaking stone eye. A trace of embarrassment appeared on his dark face. So Ida's Taoist Li Fan. My apologies, but that illusion-breaking stone eye, maybe Li Fan waved his hand to interrupt and pulled Zhao Shuyuan closer, speaking in a low voice. Forget about that for now. Fellow Taoist Zhao, I'm serious about what I just said. If you miss this opportunity, your Tao heart may shatter, and your puppets may suffer significant damage. Hearing Li Fan's ominous warning, Zhao Shuyuan's expression instantly changed. He put away his playful demeanor and looked at Li Fan with a serious expression before closing the doors of Qinli Hall. Taoist Li Fan, what do you mean by this? He asked. The Samantabhadra true leaf. Taoist Zhao, do you know about it? Recently, its price has been behaving unusually. Take a look for yourself, Li Fan replied. Zhao Shuyuan, upon hearing this, closed his eyes to think. Moments later, his brows furrowed slightly. At that moment, Li Fan explained the series of tests he had just conducted. Oh, what do you think? Li Fan asked, with a hint of appraisal in his tone. After a moment of contemplation, Zhao Shuyuan said, if I am not mistaken, the other party might have borrowed a certain quantity of Samantabhadra true leaf from somewhere. And they probably have some extra stock on hand. So they plan to temporarily lower the price by flooding the market, thus reducing their repayment amount and making a profit. Zhao Shuyuan offered his analysis. Li Fan clapped his hands, saying, great minds think alike. I thought the same. Zhao Shuyuan frowned, somewhat dissatisfied. Is this the big deal you mentioned? I don't see how it's a big opportunity. Li Fan revealed a mysterious smile. What if, and I am just saying, what if when the time comes for them to repay the borrowed Samantabhadra true leaf, the combined market supply is not enough for them to fulfill their obligation. What would happen then? Zhao Shuyuan was momentarily puzzled by Li Fan's words. He was stunned for a moment. After a while, a spark of realization flashed in his eyes. Chapter 458. Zhao Shuyuan said excitedly, you mean, when the time comes, even if someone offers them the Samantabhadra true leaf at an absurd price, they'll have no choice but to buy it to fulfill their commitments. And if we preemptively take up the majority of the market share of Samantabhadra true leaf, forcing the other party's hand, cold we easily make several times the profit. Brilliant, Zhao Shuyuan exclaimed, slapping his thigh as he figured out the crux of the plan. Taoist Zhao, you truly are a business genius. Li Fan nodded and praised him. However, Zhao Shuyuan didn't dwell on Li Fan's compliment. His expression changed as he furrowed his brows and pondered for a moment. The excitement on his face gradually faded as he shook his head and said, your idea is indeed brilliant, but it seems a bit too idealistic. What if, when the other party borrowed the Samantabhadra true leaf, the contract they signed included a clause allowing them to repay with equivalent contributions? What if they choose to breach the contract, risking backlash, but refuse to buy back the Samantabhadra true leaf? There are too many uncontrollable factors, too much risk. Li Fan was a bit dismissive as he said, is there any business in the world without risk? Considering the potential profit, I think it's worth a try. Zhao Shuyuan's expression shifted slightly as he was about to respond, but then he heard Li Fan say, besides, I believe that even if the other party abandons the struggle with us and voluntarily withdraws, we would still profit from the large amount of Samantabhadra true leaf leaves we've acquired. What do you mean by that? Zhao Shuyuan raised an eyebrow, somewhat skeptical. A faint smile appeared on Li Fan's lips as he extended his right index finger. In an instant, a translucent icosahedral die appeared in midair, spinning rapidly and reflecting numerous fragmented images. Zhao Shuyuan froze for a moment before recognizing the treasure in Li Fan's hand and exclaimed, the Heaven-Earth Divination die. Just as he was about to take a closer look at the images on the die, Li Fan quickly put it away. I've deduced this, and it should be nearly accurate. Li Fan said seriously. Seeing Li Fan's confidence, Zhao Shuyuan hesitated for a moment. Let me investigate further. With that, the puppet in front of Li Fan suddenly lost its guiding consciousness and became completely still. Li Fan wasn't in a hurry. He stood quietly by the side, patiently waiting. He waited for an entire day and night. When vitality returned to Zhao Shuyuan, he suddenly opened his eyes, his face beaming with joy. There's hope. Oh, what did you find out, Taoist Zhao? Li Fan asked with interest. Zhao Shuyuan leaned in and lowered his voice. According to reliable sources, the manipulation of Samantabhadra true leaf prices is led by several soul transformation cultivators, headed by Tantaikan of Tianshu Prefecture. They all have connections to the headquarters of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. And the Awise discernment talisman used in various regions is almost entirely monopolized by them. Tantaikan. This surname was too unique, reminding Li Fan of the brilliant formation path genius, Tantai Dao, who had met an untimely death in his previous life. Could it be the same clan? Li Fan thought to himself, though his expression remained unchanged as he continued listening. Zhao Shuyuan continued eagerly, the truth is slightly different from our speculation. Because they control the production line of the Wise Discernment Talisman, these people have accumulated a large amount of Samantabhadra True Leaf. The number of Wise Discernment Talismans collected annually by the 10,000 Immortal Alliance is limited, and the profits are too slow. So, this group had the audacity to come up with a crooked plan. Some of them used part of the Samantabhadra True Leaf they controlled as collateral to borrow a large amount of contribution points from the Qingfeng Hall. Meanwhile, the others borrowed Samantabhadra True Leaf from Qingfeng Hall in return. In one go, the Samantabhadra True Leaf returned to their hands while they gained contribution points of equal value through arbitrage. Hearing this, Li Fan frowned and interrupted Zhao Shuyuan. I remember, the interest rates at Qingfeng Hall aren't low, right? How much profit can they make from this? And once they have the contribution points, why go through the trouble of lending out the Samantabhadra True Leaf again? Zhao Shuyuan chuckled and said, this is precisely why I said there is an opportunity for us. Because, technically, these Samantabhadra True Leaf belong to the 10,000 Immortal Alliance. The Wise Discernment Talisman involves the secrets of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance, so naturally, they need to implement control measures. Tantaikan and his group only hold the position of producing the Wise Discernment Talisman because of their backgrounds. Periodically, the 10,000 Immortal Alliance headquarters sends people to conduct routine inspections. Although they have internal connections and can receive advance notice, they still have to maintain appearances, and at least on the surface, they can't afford to lose too much. Zhao Shuyuan snorted, his eyes flashing with disdain. Even though the profits from this business are already ridiculously high, they are still not satisfied. They privately used it as collateral, exchanged it for a huge amount of contribution points, leveraged the situation, and stirred up trouble in the market. And these people have deep backgrounds and are well informed, so they are always successful and reap significant profits. They don't even care about the interest from Qingfeng Hall. Not to mention, almost all of the Samantabhadra True Leaf in the 10,000 Immortal Alliance are in their hands. Manipulating the price is easy for them, and exploiting unsuspecting cultivators is a piece of cake. Li Fan slowly nodded, understanding the methods of Tantaikan and his group. In essence, they were embezzling the strategic resources of the 10,000 Immortal Alliance to exchange for contribution points. Then, through insider information, they bought low and sold high to profit for themselves. Such a crime is not minor. Taoist Zhao, it's impressive that you could uncover all this, your abilities must be near divine. Li Fan regained his composure and clicked his tongue in admiration. Zhao Shuyuan waved his hand, it's just that these people are too arrogant. Not only do they not keep it strictly confidential, but they also use it as bragging material in casual conversations. That's how I found out. Otherwise, how could I have known such a private matter? Li Fan chuckled and didn't dwell on this, instead discussing with Zhao Shuyuan the feasibility of striking against Tantaikan's group. In this case, my previous concerns are no longer an issue. No matter what, they will have to recover the Samantabhadra True Leaf. Even if it means losing everything, they must do so. Otherwise, if the truth comes to light, not even the backers behind them will be able to protect them. At that point, it won't just be a matter of bankruptcy. Death and complete annihilation will be the least of their worries. Zhao Shuyuan's face turned cold as he spoke with unwavering determination. Excellent, Li Fan applauded, his face showing approval. My only concern is that we are two against many, and we might not be able to match them. If we can't deliver a decisive blow and they catch wind of our plan, we might lose everything. Zhao Shuyuan suddenly said.